There are two kinds of people in Manhattan, those who break quietly and those who shatter in front of 200 witnesses with cameras rolling. Evelyn Shaw became the second kind on a freezing Thursday night when her fiancé didn't just end their engagement. He executed it like a public trial, replaced her before she could even process the humiliation, and walked away leaving her ring on the table like evidence of a crime she didn't commit. But what Cameron Vance didn't know was that the stranger watching from the shadows would offer her something far more dangerous than comfort, revenge wrapped in a contract, signed in blood and bound by 6 months that would rewrite everything. Drop a like, comment your city so I can see how far this story travels, and let's begin. The elevator to the Apex Club took 43 seconds to reach the rooftop, and Evelyn Shaw spent every single one of them checking her reflection in the polished brass doors. Her engagement ring caught the overhead light, a modest emerald-cut diamond that Cameron had saved 8 months to afford. She twisted it once, twice, the way she always did when she was nervous, even though tonight was supposed to be a celebration. 3 years. 3 years since Cameron Vance had proposed on a Brooklyn pier at sunset with shaking hands and a speech he'd clearly rehearsed but still fumbled through. 3 years since she'd said yes without hesitation, believing in the version of their future he painted with such certainty it felt inevitable. The elevator chimed. The doors opened onto a wall of sound, laughter, champagne glasses clinking, the low hum of Manhattan's elite pretending they weren't all performing for each other. The Apex Club wasn't just expensive, it was exclusive in the way that made exclusivity feel like oxygen. You either belonged here or you suffocated trying. Evelyn stepped out, scanning the crowd for Cameron's familiar profile. He'd texted her 2 hours ago, rooftop, 8 p.m., dress nice, I have a surprise. She'd assumed reservations at their favorite corner table. Maybe a toast. Cameron loved grand gestures when they didn't cost much. Flowers from the bodega, handwritten notes tucked into her briefcase, the kind of romance that felt earnest even when it was small. But the hostess didn't greet her. Nobody did. Instead, the entire room seemed to pivot in her direction like a choreographed movement, 200 faces turning as one, and that's when Evelyn saw him. Cameron stood in the center of the room beneath a spotlight she hadn't noticed before. He wasn't alone. Beside him, draped in a champagne-colored gown that probably cost more than Evelyn's monthly rent, stood Sloane Hartwell. Hotel heiress, political donor, the kind of woman whose name appeared in society columns next to words like philanthropist and influencer without a trace of irony. Evelyn's breath caught. She stopped walking. Cameron saw her. His expression didn't change. No guilt, no hesitation. If anything, he looked relieved, like her arrival had triggered the next phase of a plan already in motion. "Evelyn," he said, his voice amplified by a microphone she hadn't seen him holding. "I'm glad you made it." The crowd parted. A path opened between them like a stage direction. Evelyn's stomach twisted. Something was wrong. This wasn't a surprise. This was a setup. "Cameron, what's going on?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended, swallowed by the acoustics of the room. He smiled. It was the same smile he used during his campaign speeches, practiced, confident, designed to project warmth without actually offering any. "I wanted to do this in front of people who matter, people who understand what it takes to build a real future in this city." Sloane's hand rested on his arm, possessive, casual, like it had been there before. Evelyn's pulse hammered. "Do what?" Cameron reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Not the one her ring had come in. This one was newer, expensive. He opened it, revealing a diamond so large it looked obscene under the spotlight. "I'm ending our engagement," Cameron said, his tone calm, almost clinical. "Effective immediately." The room went silent. Evelyn couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The words didn't compute, didn't fit together in any order that made sense. "You're... what?" "Our relationship was built on a foundation that no longer serves my goals," Cameron continued, like he was delivering a press statement. "You're talented, Evelyn, brilliant even. But talent isn't enough in this world. You have to be strategic. You have to understand power." Someone in the crowd whispered. A phone camera flashed. "I need a partner who complements my political ambitions," Cameron said. "Someone who understands the circles I'm moving in. Sloane and I have been talking for months, and we've realized we're aligned in ways that matter." Evelyn's vision blurred. She forced herself to focus, to stay upright, even as her knees threatened to buckle. Months? 6, to be exact. Sloane spoke for the first time, her voice smooth, unbothered. Cameron and I met at a donor event last spring. We connected immediately. 6 months. Evelyn did the math in her head, her architect's brain automatically constructing timelines. 6 months ago, Cameron had been preparing for his city council run. 6 months ago, he'd told Evelyn he loved her, that they were building something permanent. 6 months ago, he'd been lying. You said you wanted to wait until after the election to set a wedding date, Evelyn said, her voice shaking now, anger bleeding through the shock. You said we needed to focus on your campaign. I said what I needed to say to keep things stable, Cameron replied. You were useful, Evelyn. Your success made me look good, the self-made architect dating the aspiring councilman. It was a nice narrative, but narratives change. Useful. The word landed like a slap. You're a fraud, Evelyn said, louder now, her hands clenched into fists. You stood in front of me and my family and I promised a future I no longer want. Cameron's voice hardened. You're not the victim here, Evelyn. You manipulated your way into every opportunity you ever got, leveraging your looks, your charm, playing the struggling artist card when it suited you. Don't pretend you're above strategy. The accusation was so absurd, so fundamentally wrong, that Evelyn almost laughed. She'd worked 60-hour weeks for 5 years, had turned down easier jobs to build her reputation on merit, had survived in a male-dominated industry by being twice as good and half as loud. But Cameron wasn't finished. Tonight, I'm choosing honesty, he said. I'm choosing a partner who elevates me instead of holding me back. Sloane understands that power isn't about idealism, it's about access, influence, and legacy. He turned to Sloane, took the massive diamond ring from the box, and slid it onto her finger. The crowd erupted into polite applause. Evelyn stood frozen as Cameron reached for her hand, not gently, but with the efficiency of someone completing a transaction. He slid her engagement ring off her finger before she could pull away, then placed it on the table beside them, like a piece of evidence being dismissed from a trial. I wish you the best, Evelyn, Cameron said, his tone almost kind now, magnanimous in victory. I really do. Then he turned his back on her and kissed Sloane. The cameras flashed in a strobe light frenzy. Evelyn heard her name whispered, felt the weight of 200 gazes dissecting her reaction, cataloging her humiliation for social media posts and gossip columns. She should have screamed, should have thrown something, should have done anything other than what she actually did, which was turn around and walk toward the elevator with her head high and her hands shaking so badly she had to shove them into her coat pockets to hide the tremors. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside. The doors closed, and then she broke. The cold hit her like a physical force the moment she exited onto the street. Evelyn had forgotten her scarf, her gloves, everything except the burning need to get out of that building before she shattered completely. Manhattan in January was unforgiving. The wind cut through her coat, her dress, straight into her bones. She walked without direction, her heels clicking against frozen pavement, her breath coming in short, visible gasps. She made it 3 blocks before her legs gave out. Evelyn collapsed onto a bench outside a closed boutique, her body folding in on itself as the reality of what had just happened finally, fully registered. 3 years. Gone. Dismissed. Replaced. Not in private. Not with an apology or even basic human decency. In front of an audience, with cameras recording every second, designed to humiliate her so thoroughly she'd never recover. She pressed her hands against her face, trying to hold herself together through sheer force of will, but the sobs came anyway, harsh, ragged sounds that she couldn't control. Her phone buzzed, then again, and again. She pulled it out with shaking hands. 37 notifications, text messages, social media tags, news alerts. The execution had already gone viral. Breaking, Cameron Vance ends engagement in shocking public display. Architect Evelyn Shaw replaced by heiress Sloane Hartwell. Sources say Shaw blindsided by split. There were photos, video clips, commentary from people she'd never met, dissecting her expression, her outfit, speculating about what she'd done wrong to deserve such a public dismissal. Evelyn's hands trembled so violently she nearly dropped the phone. She turned it off, shoved it back into her pocket, and wrapped her arms around herself, trying to generate warmth where there was none. "Miss Shaw." The voice came from behind her, low, calm, male. Evelyn jerked upright, her heart slamming against her ribs. She spun around. A man stood 5 feet away, hands in the pockets of an expensive black overcoat. Tall, well over 6 feet. Dark hair, dark eyes, the kind of bone structure that belonged on a European runway or a Mafia movie poster. He was maybe 35, maybe older, the kind of face that made age irrelevant. "Who are you?" Evelyn's voice came out hoarse. Someone who was at the Apex Club tonight. He didn't move closer, didn't invade her space. His tone was neutral, almost clinical. "I left when you did." Evelyn's instinct screamed at her to run, but her body was too exhausted, too wrecked to obey. "Are you a reporter?" "No." "Then what do you want?" "To offer you a ride before the paparazzi find you." Evelyn laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "I don't know you." "You don't," he agreed. "But you're about to be ambushed by photographers who followed you from the restaurant. They're 2 blocks away. You have maybe 90 seconds before they arrive." Evelyn's pulse spiked. She looked past him, down the street, and saw movement, figures with cameras, moving fast. "Why do you care?" she demanded. The man's expression didn't change. "I don't, but I have a proposition that requires privacy, and you're about to lose yours permanently." "A proposition?" "Yes." "From a stranger?" "For now." Evelyn's mind raced. Every logical instinct told her to refuse, to scream, to flag down a cab and disappear into the city. But logic had stopped working the moment Cameron had removed her ring in front of 200 people. "What kind of proposition?" she asked. "The kind that gives you leverage," the man said, "and revenge, if you want it." The word hung in the frozen air between them. Revenge. Evelyn stared at him, the stranger with his unreadable face and his expensive coat and his impossible calm in the middle of her worst night. "Who are you?" she asked again. "Lucian Moretti?" The name meant nothing to her. She waited for more, but he didn't elaborate. "I have a car around the corner," Lucian said. "You can get in, or you can stay here and let them turn you into tomorrow's headline. Your choice." The photographers were closer now. She could hear their voices, sharp and eager. Evelyn stood, her legs shook, but they held. "If you try anything, I won't." She didn't believe him, didn't trust him, didn't have any reason to think this was anything other than a catastrophically bad decision. But she followed him anyway. Quote, "The car was a black Mercedes with tinted windows and a driver who didn't speak or make eye contact. Lucian held the door open for Evelyn, waited until she was inside, then slid in beside her. The door closed. The driver pulled away from the curb. Evelyn pressed herself against the opposite side of the seat, her hand on the door handle, every muscle tensed for escape. Lucian didn't move. He sat with his hands folded in his lap, his expression calm, like he transported traumatized women through Manhattan every night. "Where are we going?" Evelyn demanded. "Nowhere specific. We're driving until you decide whether to listen to my offer or ask to be dropped off." "And if I ask to be dropped off?" "Then you're dropped off. No conditions." Evelyn studied him, searching for the lie, the angle, the inevitable betrayal, but his face gave nothing away. "What's your proposition?" she asked. Lucian reached into his coat and pulled out a slim leather portfolio. He opened it, removed a single sheet of paper, and handed it to her. Evelyn took it. Her hands were still shaking. It was a contract, typed, formal, dense with legal language she'd need a lawyer to parse. But certain phrases jumped out. 6-month term, public marriage, mutual termination clause, compensation, $500,000 upon completion. Evelyn's vision blurred. She read it again, certain she'd misunderstood. "You want me to marry you?" she said slowly. "Yes." "For 6 months?" "Correct." "In exchange for $500,000. "And protection." Evelyn looked up. "Protection from what?" "From Cameron Vance's narrative," Lucian said. "Right now, you're the jilted woman, the one who got publicly humiliated and replaced. That story will follow you for years. In every job interview, every professional introduction, every relationship you try to build." Evelyn's throat tightened because he was right. She could already see it unfolding, The whispers, the pity, the way people would always associate her name with that night. But if you marry me, Lucian continued, the narrative changes. You're not the victim anymore. You're the woman who walked away from a small-time politician and married someone far more powerful. I don't even know who you are, Evelyn said. You will. That's not an answer. Lucian tilted his head slightly, considering her. I run several businesses in Manhattan. Construction, real estate development, private security. I'm wealthy, well-connected, and extremely private. That's all you need to know for now. Why me? Evelyn demanded. Why not marry someone you actually know? Because I need a wife who understands this is transactional, Lucian said simply. Someone who won't confuse a contract with a relationship. You're intelligent, professional, and publicly humiliated enough to need an exit strategy. That makes you ideal. The bluntness should have offended her. Instead, it felt almost honest. The first honest thing anyone had said to her all night. And what do you get out of this? Evelyn asked. Legitimacy, Lucian said. I'm expanding into new markets that require a certain image. A wife provides stability, respectability. It's good for business. Evelyn stared at the contract. $500,000. 6 months, a complete rewrite of the story Cameron had tried to bury her with. This is insane, she said. Yes. I could go to the press. Tell them you tried to bribe me into a fake marriage. You could, Lucian agreed, but you won't. Why not? Because you're too angry to settle for small revenge. And this, he gestured to the contract, is revenge on a scale Cameron Vance can't comprehend. Evelyn's hands tightened on the paper. She thought about Cameron's face as he'd slid her ring off her finger. Thought about Sloane's smug smile. Thought about 200 people watching her fall apart. I need time to think, she said. You have until we reach your apartment, Lucian said. After that, the offer expires. That's not enough time. It's more than Cameron gave you. The words hit like a punch. Evelyn's breath caught. Lucian leaned forward slightly. I'm not asking you to trust me, Miss Shaw. I'm asking you to make a decision that serves your interests. You can walk away, rebuild your life slowly, and spend years trying to escape tonight. Or you can accept my offer and rewrite the ending before anyone else gets the chance. The car slowed. Evelyn looked out the window and recognized her building. A modest walk-up in Chelsea. Nothing like the luxury high-rises Cameron had promised they'd move into after the wedding. The driver put the car in park. Lucian waited. Evelyn stared at the contract, at the impossible number written in clean, precise type, at the words mutual termination clause and protection and 6 months. She thought about her empty apartment, about tomorrow morning when she'd have to face her colleagues and clients and friends with the story of her public humiliation already viral. She thought about Cameron kissing Sloane while cameras flashed, and she thought about the stranger sitting across from her, offering her a way out that was so absurd it almost made sense. If I say yes, Evelyn said quietly, what happens next? We get married in 48 hours, Lucian said. You move into my residence. We make a public appearance together within the week. And for 6 months, you play the role of my wife in every context that matters. And after 6 months, you walk away with $500,000 and a new story. No strings, no conditions. Evelyn's hands trembled. She looked at Lucian's face, at the sharp lines and unreadable eyes and the complete absence of anything resembling warmth or deception. He wasn't lying. She didn't know how she knew, but she did. This was exactly what he said it was. A transaction, cold, clinical, survivable. I want the contract reviewed by a lawyer before I sign anything, Evelyn said. Agreed. And I want it in writing that you won't touch me, that this stays professional. Already included. Section 7, paragraph 3. Evelyn found the clause. Read it twice. It was airtight. She took a breath, then another. And then she said the words that would change everything. I'll do it. Lucian's expression didn't shift. He simply extended his hand. Evelyn shook it. His grip was firm, controlled, and cold as the January night outside. Welcome to the arrangement, Miss Shaw, Lucian said. I'll have the paperwork finalized by tomorrow morning. He opened the car door, stepped out, and offered his hand to help her exit. Evelyn took it, her legs unsteady as she stood on the sidewalk outside her building. Lucian released her hand and stepped back. "Get some rest," he said. "We have a wedding to plan." Then he returned to the car, and the Mercedes pulled away, leaving Evelyn standing alone in the freezing night with a contract in her hand and the horrifying certainty that she'd just agreed to marry a complete stranger. She looked down at the paper, at Lucien Moretti's signature already inked at the bottom, waiting for hers. Evelyn didn't sleep. She sat on her apartment floor with her back against the couch, the contract spread across the coffee table, reading the same clauses over and over until the words stopped making sense. Her phone lay face down beside her, vibrating every few minutes with calls and messages she refused to answer. The radiator hissed and clanked in the corner, struggling against the cold seeping through the single-pane windows. By the time dawn broke, she'd memorized every word of Lucien Moretti's offer. 6 months, $500,000. A marriage that wasn't a marriage, an escape that felt more like a trap. At 7:30, her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. Evelyn stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Miss Shaw." Lucian's voice was as controlled as it had been the night before, like he'd been awake for hours. "A car will pick you up at 9. Bring the contract. We'll review it with my attorney before you sign." "I haven't decided yet," Evelyn said, even though they both knew she was lying. "Yes, you have." There was no smugness in his tone, just certainty. 9 o'clock. He hung up. Evelyn sat there holding the phone, her jaw clenched, hating how right he was. Tats. The car arrived exactly on time. Same black Mercedes, same silent driver. This time Evelyn didn't hesitate. She climbed into the back seat with the contract clutched against her chest and watched her building disappear through the tinted windows. The city looked different in daylight, sharper, more unforgiving. People rushed past on sidewalks, clutching coffee cups and staring at phones, oblivious to the fact that Evelyn Shaw's entire life had detonated less than 12 hours ago. The car headed uptown, cutting through traffic with the kind of aggressive confidence that suggested the driver had done this route 1,000 times. They passed Central Park, then continued north into a neighborhood Evelyn recognized but had never entered, the kind of area where doormen wore white gloves and buildings had names instead of addresses. The Mercedes pulled up in front of a limestone tower with Art Deco detailing and a brass placard that read simply, "The Moretti." Evelyn's stomach dropped. The driver opened her door. She stepped out onto the sidewalk, craning her neck to see the top of the building. 30 floors, maybe more. Glass and stone and old money. "Miss Shaw." A woman in a tailored black suit appeared at the entrance. Mid-40s, sharp-featured, with the kind of posture that suggested military training or ballet. "Mr. Moretti is waiting. This way." Evelyn followed her through a lobby that looked like it had been ripped from a European palace. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, oil paintings and gilt frames. The elevator required a key card. The woman swiped hers without a word, pressed the button for the penthouse, and stepped back. The doors closed. The elevator rose. Evelyn's pulse hammered. She tried to slow her breathing, but her lungs wouldn't cooperate. The elevator chimed. The doors opened directly into an apartment. Not an apartment, a penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River, furniture that looked expensive enough to require insurance, and enough square footage to fit Evelyn's entire building inside with room to spare. Lucian stood near the windows, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He turned when she entered, his expression unreadable. "Miss Shaw, thank you for coming. Did I have a choice?" Evelyn's voice came out sharper than she intended. "Always." Lucian gestured toward a sitting area near the windows. "Please." Evelyn crossed the room, hyper-aware of the woman in the black suit standing near the elevator, watching everything. She sat on the edge of a leather chair that was somehow both modern and antique, refusing to relax into it. Lucian sat across from her. Between them, a glass coffee table held a stack of documents that made the contract in Evelyn's hands look thin by comparison. "Before we proceed," Lucian said, "I need to introduce you to someone." He looked past Evelyn toward a hallway she hadn't noticed. "Isabella." A woman emerged from the shadows like she'd been waiting for her cue. She was younger than Lucian, late 20s, maybe 30, with the same dark hair and sharp bone structure. But where Lucian's face was controlled and unreadable, hers was expressive in a way that felt dangerous. Her eyes moved over Evelyn like a scanner, cataloging every detail. "This is my sister, Lucian said. Isabella Moretti. Isabella didn't offer her hand. She stood with her arms crossed, her expression somewhere between skepticism and outright hostility. So this is the architect, Isabella said. Her voice was lower than Evelyn expected, with an edge that suggested she'd perfected the art of controlled aggression. The one Cameron Vance threw away in front of half of Manhattan. Isabella, Lucian's tone held a warning. What? I'm being accurate. Isabella turned her attention fully to Evelyn. You understand what you're agreeing to? I'm still deciding, Evelyn said. No, you're not. You're here because you're desperate and angry and you want revenge. Those are terrible reasons to make permanent decisions. It's not permanent, Evelyn shot back. It's 6 months. 6 months in this world is permanent, Isabella said. Once you're in, you don't just walk away clean. Isabella, Lucian's voice hardened. That's enough. Isabella's jaw tightened, but she stepped back, her arms still crossed. Evelyn's heart raced. She looked between the siblings, sensing a dynamic she didn't understand, but could feel crackling in the air between them. What does she mean, this world? Evelyn asked. Lucian's expression didn't change. My businesses operate in complex markets. There are risks. Isabella worries unnecessarily. I worry realistically, Isabella corrected. And you're bringing a civilian into something she's completely unprepared for. I'm sitting right here, Evelyn said, her voice rising. If you have concerns, say them to me directly. Isabella's eyes narrowed. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. A sharp, humorless expression. Fine. My concern is that you're going to get yourself killed because you don't understand the first thing about the people my brother deals with. You think this is about revenge on your ex-fiancé. It's not. It's about Lucian needing a prop for his expansion into legitimate development markets. And you're convenient. Isabella. Lucian stood. The movement was controlled, but there was steel underneath. Leave. No. The single word hung in the air. Lucian and Isabella stared at each other, and Evelyn watched something silent and vicious pass between them, a conversation in glances and micro-expressions that she had no hope of decoding. Finally, Isabella turned and walked toward the hallway, but before she disappeared, she looked back at Evelyn. If you sign that contract, Isabella said quietly, don't expect anyone to save you when it goes wrong, especially not him. Then she was gone. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Evelyn's hands shook. She pressed them against her thighs, trying to steady herself. What the hell was that? My sister has trust issues, Lucian said, sitting back down. Ignore her. She said I'd get killed. She's being dramatic. Is she? Evelyn leaned forward. What exactly do you do, Mr. Moretti? Lucian studied her for a long moment. Then he reached for the stack of documents on the table and pushed them toward her. I run a construction and development company, he said. We build residential towers, commercial properties, infrastructure projects. We also provide private security services for high-profile clients. Everything is legal, licensed, and above board. Evelyn pulled the documents closer. Corporate filings, building permits, contracts with the city. Everything looked legitimate, almost aggressively so, like someone had gone out of their way to ensure a paper trail. Then why does your sister think I'm in danger? Evelyn asked. Because she lost someone, Lucian said. His voice didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Something old and buried. And she blames me for it. Who did she lose? That's not relevant to our arrangement. It is if it affects my safety. Lucian's jaw tightened. For the first time, Evelyn saw a crack in his composure. Small, barely visible, but there. My previous wife, he said finally. She died 3 years ago. Isabella holds me responsible. The words landed like stones. Evelyn's breath caught. How? A targeted attack that was meant for me. Lucian's tone was flat, clinical, like he was discussing a business transaction. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It won't happen again. How can you possibly guarantee that? Because I'm more careful now. Lucian leaned back, his expression hardening into something unreadable again. And because this arrangement is temporary, you'll be visible enough to serve the purpose but protected enough to stay safe. That's the deal. Evelyn stared at him, her mind racing. Everything about this man screamed danger, The controlled violence in his posture, the way Isabella had looked at him like he was a loaded weapon, the casual admission that his first wife had been murdered. But Cameron's face flashed through her mind. The smug smile, the way he'd removed her ring like he was discarding trash. "I want to meet with your attorney," Evelyn said. "Alone." Lucian nodded. Agreed. He pulled out his phone, typed something, and within 30 seconds, a man in an expensive suit appeared from another hallway. Late 50s, silver hair, the kind of face that had spent decades negotiating high-stakes deals. "This is Marcus Chen," Lucian said. "My corporate attorney. He'll review the contract with you in the library. Take as long as you need." Marcus gestured toward a door off the main room. "This way, Miss Shaw." Evelyn stood, clutching the contract. She looked at Lucian one more time, searching for something. Reassurance, honesty, anything that would make this feel less insane. He gave her nothing. She followed Marcus into the library. But 2 hours later, Evelyn emerged with a revised contract and a lawyer's business card tucked into her pocket. Marcus Chen was thorough. He'd walked her through every clause, answered every question, and confirmed that the contract was exactly what Lucian claimed. A 6-month employment agreement disguised as a marriage, with exit clauses so airtight that Evelyn could walk away at any point with minimal legal consequences. The money was real. The timeline was fixed. The protections were extensive. It should have felt like a victory. Instead, Evelyn felt like she was signing her life away. Lucian waited in the main room, standing by the windows with his hands in his pockets. He turned when she approached. "Did Marcus answer your questions?" he asked. "Yes." "And?" Evelyn set the contract on the table. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked up the pen Marcus had left for her. "If I do this," she said slowly, "I need to know one thing. Ask. Are you going to hurt me?" Lucian's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between them, a recognition of the question underneath the question. "No," he said, "I'm not." "How do I know you're telling the truth?" "You don't." Lucian's voice was quiet, almost gentle. "But you're going to sign anyway, because the alternative is worse." Evelyn hated that he was right. She clicked the pen, found the signature line, and signed her name in quick, decisive strokes before she could change her mind. Lucian picked up the contract, glanced at her signature, then added his own beneath it. "We're getting married tomorrow," he said. "City Hall, noon. Witnesses will be provided. Dress professionally." "That's it?" Evelyn's voice came out hollow. "That's it? No ceremony, no guests. This isn't a wedding, Miss Shaw. It's a transaction. Don't confuse the two." The words were harsh, but they cut through the fog in Evelyn's brain, forcing her to confront what she'd actually agreed to. This wasn't romance. It wasn't rescue. It was a contract between two people using each other for specific defined purposes. "When do I move in?" she asked. "Tonight." Evelyn's pulse spiked. "That's not enough time. You don't need time. You need distance from your old life before the media finds you again." Lucian gestured toward the woman in the black suit, who'd been standing silently near the elevator. "Maria will accompany you to your apartment. Pack what you need. Everything else will be handled." "Handled how?" "Your lease will be paid through the end of the year. Your belongings will be stored. You'll have access to everything when the contract ends." It was happening too fast. Evelyn's brain couldn't keep up. "I need to call my family," she said. "My friends. I can't just disappear." "You can tell them you're taking time away after the breakup," Lucian said. "That's all they need to know for now." "And when we announce the marriage?" "We'll control that narrative when the time comes." Lucian checked his watch. "Maria will have you back here by 6. We'll discuss logistics over dinner." He was dismissing her. Evelyn recognized the tone, the way his attention had already shifted to something else. She wanted to argue. Wanted to demand more time, more control, more something. But the contract was signed, and the machinery was already in motion. Maria appeared at her elbow. "Miss Shaw, we should go." Evelyn followed her into the elevator, her mind spinning. As the doors closed, she caught one last glimpse of Lucian standing by the windows, his expression unreadable, his hands in his pockets, already looking like a stranger. Evelyn's apartment felt smaller than she remembered. She stood in the doorway, staring at the familiar chaos. Books stacked on every surface, architectural drawings pinned to the walls, half-finished coffee cups scattered across her desk. Evidence of a life that had been interrupted mid-sentence. Maria waited in the hallway, giving her space but making it clear this wasn't optional. Evelyn grabbed a suitcase from her closet and started throwing clothes into it without thinking. Jeans, sweaters, the black dress she'd worn to Cameron's campaign events. She paused on that one, her fingers tightening on the fabric. Then she shoved it into the suitcase anyway. Her phone buzzed. She'd been ignoring it all day, but the vibrations had become constant, insistent. She picked it up. 43 missed calls. Over 100 texts. Most from her best friend, Jenna. Some from colleagues. A few from her mother, and one from Cameron. Evelyn's stomach twisted. She opened the message before she could stop herself. I'm sorry it had to be public, but you'll understand eventually. This is better for both of us. The audacity of it, the complete lack of self-awareness, made her hands shake. She almost threw the phone. Almost screamed. Almost let herself break down for the second time in 24 hours. Instead, she deleted the message and blocked his number. Then she called Jenna. 2 rings. Oh my God, Evie, I've been trying to reach you all night. Are you okay? Where are you? I saw the videos and I'm going to kill him. I'm literally going to find Cameron and... Jenna, stop. Evelyn's voice came out calmer than she felt. I'm fine. You're not fine. Nobody's fine after that. I'm coming over right now. Don't. Evelyn cut her off. I'm leaving the city for a while. I just need space. Silence on the other end. Then, leaving? Evie, what are you talking about? I can't explain right now. I just need you to trust me. This isn't like you. Jenna's voice shifted from concern to alarm. You don't run. You fight. What's going on? I'm not running. Evelyn glanced at Maria, who was checking her watch. I'm just taking control of the situation in my own way. That sounds like something a kidnapping victim would say under duress. Despite everything, Evelyn almost laughed. I'm not kidnapped. Then tell me where you're going. I can't. Evie, I'll call you in a few days, I promise. Just trust me. She hung up before Jenna could argue. The silence that followed felt like a betrayal. Evelyn finished packing in a blur. Clothes, toiletries, her laptop, the framed photo of her and her parents at her architecture school graduation. She paused on that one, her throat tight. Her mother was going to lose her mind when she found out, but that was a problem for later. Maria appeared in the doorway. Miss Shaw, we need to go. Evelyn zipped the suitcase, took one last look at her apartment, at the life she was leaving behind, at least temporarily. Then she followed Maria out the door. Dinner was served in a private dining room off Lucian's penthouse. Evelyn sat across from him at a table that could have seated 12, picking at a meal that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. The food was exquisite. Some kind of fish with herbs she couldn't identify, vegetables that looked like art, but she could barely taste it. Lucian ate methodically, like refueling was a task to be completed efficiently. We need to establish ground rules, he said, setting down his fork, starting with appearances. Evelyn looked up. Appearances? In public, we're a married couple. That means physical proximity, hand-holding, occasional displays of affection, nothing excessive, but enough to be convincing. The thought made Evelyn's skin crawl. Define occasional. A hand on your back when we enter a room, standing close at events, perhaps a kiss if the situation demands it. The contract says no physical contact. The contract says no intimate contact, Lucian corrected. There's a difference. I won't touch you in private, but in public, we play the role. Evelyn's jaw tightened. And if I'm not comfortable with that, then you shouldn't have signed. The bluntness hit like a slap. Evelyn set down her own fork, her appetite gone completely. What else? She asked. You'll attend select events with me. Business dinners, gallery openings, charity functions, places where visibility matters. Maria will coordinate your schedule. I have a job. You have a leave of absence. Lucian pulled a folder from beside his plate and slid it across the table. Effective immediately. Your firm's senior partner has been informed that you're taking time off due to personal circumstances. You'll be compensated for the lost income. Evelyn stared at the folder like it might explode. You contacted my boss without asking me? I told you. Distance from your old life. That includes professional obligations that might complicate the arrangement. You can't just... Evelyn's voice rose. You can't make decisions about my career without consulting me. I can when those decisions are outlined in the contract you signed. Lucian's tone remained level. Section 12. Did you not read it? Evelyn's hands clenched into fists. She had read it, every word, but seeing it executed felt different than agreeing to it in theory. I'm not your property, she said. I never suggested you were. Then stop treating me like an asset you acquired. Something flickered in Lucian's expression. Annoyance, maybe, or surprise. You agreed to this arrangement, Miss Shaw. I'm simply implementing the terms. The terms that you wrote, and that you signed. They stared at each other across the table, the tension thick enough to cut. Finally, Lucian leaned back. If you want to renegotiate, now is the time. Evelyn's pulse hammered. She thought about walking out, about tearing up the contract and going back to her apartment and facing the humiliation on her own terms. But then she thought about Cameron's message. This is better for both of us. And she stayed in her chair. I want access to my own money, she said. Not an allowance, my own accounts. Agreed. And I want to be consulted before any major decisions that affect me. Within reason. No, not within reason. Actually consulted. Lucian studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Agreed. Evelyn exhaled. It wasn't much, but it was something. Good, Lucian said. Now finish your dinner. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. Yeah. The wedding took 11 minutes. City Hall, noon, exactly as Lucian had promised. A clerk who looked bored out of her mind read the legal language while Evelyn stood in a gray dress she'd bought that morning, and Lucian wore the same expression he'd worn through dinner, controlled, detached, professional. Two witnesses Evelyn had never met stood off to the side. Maria and another member of Lucian's security team, both stone-faced. Do you, Lucian Moretti, take Evelyn Shaw to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Do you, Evelyn Shaw, take Lucian Moretti to be your lawfully wedded husband? Evelyn's throat closed. She looked at Lucian, at his unreadable face, at the complete absence of anything resembling emotion. This wasn't a wedding, it was a performance. I do, she said. The clerk smiled. You may kiss the bride. Lucian stepped forward. Evelyn's heart slammed against her ribs as he placed one hand lightly on her waist. Professional, controlled, exactly as he'd described, and leaned in. The kiss lasted maybe 2 seconds. His lips barely brushed hers, more suggestion than contact. Then he stepped back, and it was over. Congratulations, the clerk said, handing them a marriage certificate. Evelyn stared at the document, at her name next to Lucian's, at the official seal that made it real, Mrs. Evelyn Moretti. The name looked wrong, felt wrong. She folded the certificate and shoved it into her purse before she could think about it too hard. Outside, photographers were waiting. Evelyn froze on the steps, blinded by camera flashes. Mrs. Moretti, over here. How long have you been seeing Mr. Moretti? What about Cameron Vance? Did you know about the marriage before the breakup? Lucian's hand found the small of her back, warm, steady, possessive. He guided her down the steps toward the waiting Mercedes, his expression calm despite the chaos erupting around them. Smile, he murmured, too quiet for anyone else to hear. You're supposed to be happy. Evelyn forced her lips into something resembling a smile, even though her hands were shaking and her chest felt like it was caving in. The car door opened. Lucian helped her inside, then slid in beside her. The door closed, the noise cut off. Evelyn pressed her hands against her thighs, trying to stop the trembling. Well done, Lucian said, pulling out his phone. That's it? Evelyn's voice came out strangled. Well done? You looked convincing. That's what matters. Evelyn stared at him, at this man she'd just married, this stranger who treated their wedding like a business meeting. Do you feel anything? She asked. Lucian glanced up from his phone. About what? About any of this. About the fact that we just got married. It's a legal contract, Lucian said. Feelings aren't relevant. The word should have stung. Instead, they just made Evelyn tired. She turned toward the window and watched Manhattan blur past, wondering what the hell she'd gotten herself into. The first public appearance came 3 days later. A charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum, black tie, 500 guests. The kind of event where Manhattan's elite went to be seen while pretending to care about underprivileged children. Evelyn stood in front of the bathroom mirror in Lucian's penthouse, staring at herself in a dress that cost more than her first car. Midnight blue silk that fit like it had been designed for her body specifically, which it had. Maria had brought in a stylist that morning who'd treated Evelyn like a mannequin, adjusting and pinning and critiquing until every detail was flawless. Her hair was pulled back in a way that made her neck look longer. Her makeup was subtle but devastating, the kind that looked natural until you realized how much skill had gone into creating that illusion. She barely recognized herself. "You look beautiful." Evelyn jumped. Isabella stood in the doorway wearing a black dress that managed to be both elegant and vaguely threatening. "I didn't hear you come in," Evelyn said. "I'm good at that." Isabella stepped into the bathroom, her eyes moving over Evelyn with the same analytical assessment she'd used during their first meeting. "My brother has good taste, I'll give him that." This wasn't his choice. The stylist picked everything. The stylist works for him. Everything you're wearing right now is an extension of Lucian's image. Isabella leaned against the counter. "You understand that, right? You're not a person tonight. You're a message." Evelyn's stomach twisted. "What kind of message?" "That Lucian Moretti is stable, legitimate, the kind of man who has a beautiful wife and attends charity events and belongs in the same rooms as senators and CEOs. Isabella's voice was matter-of-fact. "You're his entry ticket into circles that wouldn't touch him otherwise." "Why not?" "Because people like my brother don't usually get invited to galas at the Met." Isabella's smile was sharp. "At least, not through the front door." Before Evelyn could respond, Lucian appeared behind Isabella. "We're leaving in 5 minutes," he said. He was wearing a tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a cologne ad. Sharp, dangerous, impossibly controlled. Isabella pushed off the counter. "Try not to get her killed on her first public outing." "Isabella." "I'm serious." Isabella looked at Evelyn. "Stay close to him. Don't wander off. And if anyone asks you questions about Lucian's business, play stupid. It's safer." Then she left. Evelyn and Lucian stared at each other. "Is she always like that?" Evelyn asked. "Yes." "And you just tolerate it?" "She's my sister." Lucian extended his arm. "Ready?" Evelyn took a breath. Then she linked her arm through his, and they walked toward the elevator together. Okay. The Met was already packed when they arrived. Evelyn had been to exactly one gala in her life, a fundraiser for her architecture school that had felt awkward and overpriced. This was different. This was Manhattan royalty dressed in couture, air-kissing each other while waiters circulated with champagne that probably cost more per bottle than Evelyn's monthly student loan payment. Lucian's hand settled on her lower back as they entered, exactly as he'd promised. The touch was light, professional, but everyone noticed. Heads turned, whispers started. "Is that Lucian Moretti?" "Who's the woman?" "Oh my God, is that Evelyn Shaw, Cameron Vance's ex?" The recognition felt like being stripped naked in public. Evelyn forced herself to keep her expression neutral, her posture relaxed, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. "Breathe," Lucian murmured, too quiet for anyone else to hear. "You're doing fine." They moved through the crowd, Lucian stopping occasionally to shake hands with men in expensive suits, exchange brief pleasantries with women dripping in jewelry. Every interaction was smooth, calculated, perfectly choreographed. And through it all, his hand never left her back. Evelyn was scanning the room, trying to orient herself, when she saw him. Cameron. He stood near the bar with Sloane Hartwell on his arm, both of them dressed like they'd just stepped out of a magazine. He was laughing at something someone said, his expression relaxed, confident. Then he saw Evelyn. The laugh died. His face went pale. Sloane noticed immediately. She followed his gaze, and when she saw Evelyn standing next to Lucian Moretti, her expression shifted from smug to uncertain. Evelyn's pulse hammered, every muscle in her body tensed. Lucian felt it, his hand pressed slightly firmer against her back, not controlling, but anchoring. "Do you want to leave?" he asked quietly. "No." Evelyn's voice came out stronger than she felt. "I want to stay." Lucian's lips curved into something that almost resembled a smile. "Good answer." Cameron was moving toward them now, cutting through the crowd with Sloane trailing behind. His expression had shifted from shock to something harder. Anger, maybe, or defensiveness. Evelyn? He stopped 3 feet away, his eyes moving between her and Lucian like he was trying to solve a puzzle. I didn't expect to see you here. Clearly. Evelyn's voice was ice. And you are? Cameron's attention shifted to Lucian, his tone edging toward confrontational. Lucian Moretti. Lucian extended his hand. Evelyn's husband. The word landed like a bomb. Cameron stared at Lucian's outstretched hand like it might be poisoned. Then slowly, he shook it. Husband, Cameron repeated. That's fast. When you know, you know. Lucian's tone was pleasant, almost friendly, but there was steel underneath. Congratulations on your engagement, by the way. I saw the announcement. Sloane stepped forward, her smile tight. Thank you. Cameron and I are very happy. I'm sure. Lucian's hand moved from Evelyn's back to her waist, pulling her slightly closer. The gesture was subtle but unmistakable, a claim being staked. Cameron's jaw tightened. How long have you two been— Does it matter? Evelyn cut him off. Her voice was steady now, fueled by adrenaline and fury. You made your choice, Cameron. I made mine. This is insane. Cameron's voice dropped. His eyes locked on Evelyn. You married someone you barely know to what? Prove a point? I married someone who values me, Evelyn said. Something you never figured out how to do. We're done here. Lucian's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that made Cameron step back. Enjoy your evening. He guided Evelyn away before Cameron could respond, his hand firm but not forceful. They made it halfway across the room before Evelyn's legs started shaking. I need air, she said. Lucian didn't hesitate. He led her through a side door onto a terrace overlooking Central Park, empty except for the cold night air and the distant sounds of traffic. Evelyn gripped the railing, her breath coming in short gasps. You did well, Lucian said. I feel like I'm going to throw up. That's normal. Is it? Evelyn laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Is any of this normal? Lucian didn't answer. Evelyn turned to look at him. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable in the shadows. Why did you really want to marry me? She asked. And don't give me the legitimacy speech. There are 1,000 women in Manhattan who could play this role. Why me? Lucian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, because you were angry enough not to ask too many questions. The honesty of it hit harder than any lie. Evelyn stared at him. At this man she'd married, this stranger who treated her like a business asset and defended her like she mattered. What are you really? She asked quietly. What do you think I am? I think you're dangerous. I am. And I think your sister was right. I'm going to get hurt. Lucian stepped closer, not touching, but close enough that she could see the sharp lines of his face in the moonlight. Not by me, he said. Then by who? Before Lucian could answer, the terrace door burst open. Maria appeared, her expression urgent. We need to leave. Now! Lucian's entire demeanor shifted, from calm to combat-ready in half a second. What happened? Anonymous threat. Building security flagged it. We're evacuating. Evelyn's heart slammed against her ribs. Threat? What kind of— Move. Lucian's hand was on her arm, pulling her toward the door. We'll discuss it in the car. They moved fast, through the museum, down the stairs, toward the exit where the Mercedes waited with its engine running. Evelyn's mind raced. Threat. Evacuating. The words didn't make sense. They were almost at the car when Evelyn saw him. A man in a dark coat standing near the corner, watching. Their eyes met for half a second. Then he turned and disappeared into the crowd. Lucian! I saw him. Get in the car. Evelyn climbed into the Mercedes, her hands shaking. Lucian slid in beside her, and the driver peeled away from the curb before the door was even fully closed. Who was that? Evelyn demanded. I don't know. You're lying. Lucian's jaw tightened. I don't know his name, but I know who sent him. Who? Someone who doesn't want me expanding into their territory. Evelyn's blood ran cold. Your sister said I'd be safe. You are safe. A man just threatened us at the Met. The threat wasn't specific, it was a message. A message about what? Lucian turned to look at her, and for the first time she saw something raw in his expression, something close to fear. That they know about you, he said quietly. And that you're not just my wife anymore. Evelyn's chest tightened. What am I? A target. The word hung between them like a death sentence. Evelyn pressed back against the seat, her mind spinning, her hands shaking so badly she had to clench them into fists. This wasn't supposed to happen, she said. You said I'd be protected. You are. Then why am I terrified? Lucian didn't answer. The car sped through Manhattan, past glowing windows and oblivious pedestrians, carrying Evelyn Shaw, now Evelyn Moretti, deeper into a world she didn't understand and couldn't escape. And somewhere in the darkness, someone was watching. Waiting. Planning their next move. The penthouse felt like a cage. Evelyn stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the Hudson River 30 floors below, watching the lights of passing boats cut through the darkness. Behind her, Lucian was on his phone, speaking in clipped sentences to someone she couldn't see. Maria stood near the elevator, stone-faced and alert, one hand resting near the weapon Evelyn now knew she carried under her jacket. 3 hours since the Met. 3 hours since a stranger's eyes had locked onto hers and turned her into a target. Lucian ended the call and crossed the room. His tie was loosened, his jacket discarded, but the tension in his shoulders hadn't eased. We need to talk, he said. Evelyn didn't turn around. About how you lied to me? I didn't lie. You said I'd be safe. Her voice was hollow. You said this was just visibility, just appearances. You never mentioned I'd be marked by whoever the hell is trying to kill you. They're not trying to kill me. They're trying to send a message, with me as the envelope. Evelyn spun to face him, fury burning through the fear. Who are they, Lucian? And don't give me some vague bullshit about territory disputes. I want names. Lucian's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he'd refuse. Then he gestured toward the seating area. Sit down. I don't want to sit. Sit. Down. The command in his voice was absolute. Evelyn's hands clenched into fists, but she moved to the chair and sat, her spine rigid. Lucian remained standing, his arms crossed. The man who's interested in you is named Marco Varelli. He runs smuggling operations through the port, construction materials, luxury goods, anything that moves in containers. My company's expansion into waterfront development threatens his logistics network. So this is a turf war. It's business competition with higher stakes. People don't send threats to business competitors at charity galas, Evelyn shot back. They send lawyers or buyout offers. They don't... Her voice cracked. They don't stalk women on terraces. Lucian's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Varelli doesn't play by conventional rules. And you do? I play by rules that keep people alive. Evelyn laughed, a harsh, broken sound. Your first wife died. That doesn't sound like your rules work very well. The words landed like a physical blow. Lucian's face went cold, empty, the kind of blank that suggested violence was being held back by sheer will. That's not the same situation, he said quietly. Isn't it? You said she was killed in an attack meant for you. How is that different from what's happening now? Because I was careless then. Lucian's voice was steel. I won't make the same mistake twice. You already did. The mistake was bringing me into this world without telling me what I was walking into. You knew what you were walking into. I knew I was agreeing to a fake marriage for money and revenge. I didn't know I was signing up to be bait. You're not bait. Then what am I? Lucian stared at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something crack in his composure. You're collateral damage I'm trying to prevent. The admission hung between them. Evelyn's chest tightened. She wanted to scream at him, to throw something, to demand he tear up the contract and let her walk away. But the truth was simpler and more terrifying. She was already too deep. The moment those photos of their wedding hit the news, the moment she'd stood beside Lucian at the Met with his hand on her waist, she'd stopped being Evelyn Shaw. She'd become Mrs. Moretti, and that made her a target whether she stayed or left. What happens now? She asked. We increase security. You don't go anywhere without Maria or one of my team. We limit public appearances until the situation stabilizes. And if it doesn't stabilize? Lucian's expression hardened. Then we handle it. Handle it how? You don't need to know that. Evelyn stood, her hands shaking. Stop treating me like I'm fragile. If my life is at risk, I deserve to know exactly what you're planning. My planning involves methods you don't want to be complicit in. Try me. Lucian stepped closer, his voice dropping. Varelli operates outside the law. If he escalates, I respond in kind. That means violence, retaliation, actions that could put you in legal jeopardy if you're aware of them. So no, Evelyn, you don't get to know the details. You get to stay clean while I do what's necessary to keep you breathing. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they ignited something else. A cold, furious clarity. You don't get to make that choice for me, she said. I already did. 6 months ago when I offered you the contract, you wanted protection. This is what protection looks like. This is what control looks like. In this world, they're the same thing. Evelyn stared at him, at this man she'd married, this stranger who spoke about violence like it was a business strategy. She thought about Cameron's smug face at the Met, about the way Lucian had stood between her and every threat, every camera, every judgment, and she realized something that made her stomach drop. She was starting to rely on him. Not trust, not affection, but something worse, dependence on the very thing that was destroying her. I need air, she said. The terrace, alone. Lucian's jaw tightened, but he stepped back. Maria stays on the perimeter. Evelyn didn't argue. She walked to the terrace door, stepped out into the freezing night, and let the cold air cut into her lungs. Manhattan spread out below her like a grid of broken promises. Somewhere down there, Cameron was probably celebrating with Sloane. Somewhere else, Marco Varelli was planning his next move. And here she was, 30 floors above it all, trapped in a penthouse with a man who treated marriage like a military operation. Her phone buzzed. Evelyn pulled it out, expecting another message from Jenna or her mother. Instead, it was an unknown number. You looked beautiful tonight, Mrs. Moretti. Shame about the early exit. Evelyn's blood went cold. Her hands trembled as she read it again. Then again. Lucian? Her voice came out strangled. The terrace door burst open. Lucian was beside her in seconds, Maria right behind him. Evelyn shoved the phone toward him. Lucian's expression darkened as he read the message. When did this come through? Just now. He handed the phone to Maria, who immediately started typing on her own device. How did they get my number? Evelyn demanded. I changed it after the breakup. Only 5 people have it. They have resources. Lucian's voice was tight. Maria, trace it. Already running. Maria's fingers flew across her screen. Burner phone, bouncing through multiple towers, their masking location. Evelyn's pulse hammered. This is real. This isn't just intimidation. They're watching me. We're moving you tonight, Lucian said. Moving me where? Secure location, off the grid. For how long? Until we neutralize the threat. You mean until you kill him? Evelyn's voice was flat. Lucian met her eyes. Yes. The admission should have shocked her. Instead, it just made her tired. I need to call my mother, she said. She's been leaving voicemails. If I disappear completely, she'll report me missing. Call her from the car. We're leaving in 10 minutes. Lucian? 10 minutes, Evelyn. Pack light. He turned and strode back inside, already pulling out his phone. Maria lingered. Miss Shaw, I need your phone. Why? To wipe it and install new security protocols. You'll get it back before we leave. Evelyn handed it over, feeling like she was surrendering the last piece of her old life. Maria disappeared inside. Evelyn stood alone on the terrace, staring at the city that had chewed her up and spit her out twice in 2 weeks. And somewhere in that city, a stranger was watching. Waiting. Planning. The safe house was a converted warehouse in Red Hook, industrial and anonymous. The kind of building you'd drive past without noticing. Steel doors, reinforced windows, security cameras on every corner. Evelyn sat on a couch that had seen better days, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like dust, while Lucian spoke in low tones with 3 men she didn't recognize. They'd arrived separately, 1 through the loading dock, 2 through a side entrance, all of them moving with the controlled efficiency of people who'd done this before. Isabella appeared from somewhere deeper in the warehouse carrying 2 mugs of coffee. She handed one to Evelyn without a word. Thanks, Evelyn said. Isabella sat down beside her. You're handling this better than I expected. What's the alternative? Falling apart? Most people would. Evelyn took a sip of coffee. It was terrible, burnt and bitter. I'm too angry to fall apart. Isabella's lips curved into something almost resembling a smile. Good. Anger keeps you sharp. Your brother doesn't seem to think so. My brother thinks emotions are liabilities. Isabella's voice held an edge. He's wrong, but he'll never admit it. Evelyn glanced at Lucian across the room. He was bent over a tablet with one of the men, studying what looked like architectural blueprints. What are they planning? She asked. Something you don't want to know about. Everyone keeps saying that, like I'm a child who needs to be protected from reality. You're not a child. Isabella set down her mug. But you're also not built for this world. And that's not an insult. It's an observation. What world? The one where people send death threats for fun? The one where violence is a language and hesitation gets you killed. Isabella's voice was matter-of-fact. Lucian speaks that language fluently. You don't. That makes you vulnerable. Then teach me. Isabella's eyebrows rose. Teach you what? How to survive this. How to stop being the weak link. Isabella studied her for a long moment. Then she stood. Come with me. Evelyn followed her through a maze of hallways to a room that looked like a makeshift gym. Punching bag in the corner, weights stacked against the wall, mats on the floor. Isabella crossed to a cabinet and pulled out a small handgun. She checked the chamber, confirmed it was empty, then held it out to Evelyn. You ever held one of these? She asked. Evelyn stared at the weapon. No. Good. Then you won't have bad habits to unlearn. Isabella gestured for her to take it. Go on. Evelyn's hands trembled as she reached for the gun. It was heavier than she expected, cold and solid and terrifying. It's not loaded, Isabella said. Relax. I can't relax. I'm holding a gun. You're holding a tool. That's all it is. Metal and mechanics. It only becomes dangerous when someone pulls the trigger. Evelyn's grip tightened. I don't want to learn how to kill people. Then you want to stay a victim. Isabella's voice was harsh. Because that's your choice right now. Learn how to defend yourself, or keep relying on Lucian to do it for you. He's the one who put me in this position. And you're the one who signed the contract. Isabella moved behind her, adjusting Evelyn's grip. 2 hands, firm but not rigid. Aim center mass. Breathe out when you squeeze. Evelyn's pulse hammered. She raised the gun, sighted down the barrel at the far wall. Now what? She asked. Now you practice until it feels natural, until your hands stop shaking, until you can hold this without thinking about what it means. Evelyn lowered the gun. I don't want this to feel natural. I know. Isabella's voice softened slightly. But the world doesn't care what you want. It only cares whether you survive. 3 days passed in the warehouse. Evelyn barely saw Lucian. He left early each morning and returned late each night, always with the same tight expression, the same controlled tension. When they did cross paths, their conversations were brief, functional, stripped of anything personal. Did you eat? Yes. Any suspicious calls or messages? No. Good. Stay inside. Then he'd disappear again. Isabella became Evelyn's primary companion by default. They trained in the makeshift gym, not just firearms, but hand-to-hand basics, how to break a grip, where to strike to cause maximum damage. Isabella was a brutal teacher, offering no encouragement, only corrections. Again. I can't. Again. By the 3rd day, Evelyn's body ached in places she didn't know could hurt, but her hands had stopped shaking when she held the gun. She was sitting on the warehouse steps, catching her breath after a particularly vicious sparring session when Maria appeared. Mr. Moretti wants to see you, she said. Conference room, now. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Why? He didn't say. Evelyn followed Maria through the warehouse to a room she hadn't been in before. Lucian stood at the head of a long table, surrounded by the same 3 men from the first night. Blueprints covered the table's surface, held down by coffee mugs and phones. Lucian looked up when she entered. Close the door. Evelyn did. We found Varelli's operations center, Lucian said without preamble. A shipping facility in Bayonne. He's using it to move contraband through the port. Okay, Evelyn said slowly. What does that have to do with me? We're going to raid it. Federal agents, my security team, coordinated strike. But we need a way in. Again, what does that have to do with me? Lucian gestured to the blueprints. The facility has a legitimate front, a construction supply company. They're renovating their main warehouse. 3 weeks ago, they put out a request for architectural consultation on structural improvements. Evelyn's blood went cold. No. You're a licensed architect. You have a legitimate reason to be there. Absolutely not. We need someone inside to confirm layout, security placements, entry points. Someone they won't suspect. Find someone else. There is no one else. You're the only person with both the credentials and the connection to me that makes the approach plausible. Evelyn laughed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. You want me to walk into a criminal operation and what? Take notes? Measure walls while armed men move stolen goods around me? You'll be wearing a wire. My team will be monitoring every word. The moment anything feels wrong, we pull you out. This is insane. This is strategic. This is you using me as bait. Evelyn's voice rose. You said I wasn't bait. You promised I was protected, that I'd be safe, and now you're asking me to walk into the exact place where the person threatening me operates? I'm not asking. Lucian's voice was flat. I'm telling you what needs to happen. Like hell you are. Evelyn stepped forward, fury burning through her fear. I didn't sign up for this. The contract says public appearances and social events. It says nothing about espionage. The contract says you fulfill the role of my wife in all contexts that serve our mutual interests. This serves our mutual interests. Our interests or yours? They're the same thing now. The moment Varelli made you a target, your safety became dependent on his elimination. This is how we eliminate him. Evelyn stared at him, at the cold calculation in his eyes, the complete absence of anything resembling concern for her as a person rather than a piece on a board. You're a monster, she said quietly. I'm pragmatic. You're using me. I've been using you since the day we met. That was the arrangement. Don't pretend you didn't know. The words hit like a slap. Because he was right. She had known. From the moment she signed the contract, from the moment she agreed to this insane plan, she'd known exactly what she was to him. A tool, an asset, a means to an end. What if I refuse? She asked. Then Varelli keeps operating, keeps threatening you, keeps escalating until eventually someone gets hurt. Lucian's voice was merciless. And when that happens, you'll wish you'd helped when you had the chance. So my choices are risk my life now or risk it later. Your choice is between controlled risk with my team backing you up or uncontrolled risk with Varelli making the moves. Evelyn's hands clenched into fists. And if I get caught, if they figure out why I'm really there, they won't. You don't know that. I know you're intelligent enough to sell the role. I know you're angry enough to want this over. And I know you're not stupid enough to think there's another way out. Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to go to hell, to tear up the contract, to walk out of this warehouse and disappear. But Isabella's words echoed in her mind. The world doesn't care what you want. It only cares whether you survive. When? Evelyn asked, her voice hollow. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. You'll pose as a consulting architect reviewing their renovation plans. Get in, document what you see, get out, 30 minutes, maximum. And if something goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, then we adapt. Lucian's expression didn't change. That's what we do. Evelyn stared at the blueprint spread across the table, at the clean lines and precise measurements that had once represented safety, order, control. Now they represented a trap she was about to walk into willingly. I want a gun, she said. Lucian's eyebrows rose slightly. Absolutely not. If I'm doing this, I'm going in armed. You'll be searched. A weapon will compromise your cover. Then put it somewhere they won't search. Evelyn, I'm not negotiating. Her voice was steel. You want me to risk my life for your operation? I go in with protection. Otherwise, find another architect. Lucian and Evelyn stared at each other across the table, locked in a silent battle of wills. Finally, Lucian looked at Isabella, who'd been watching from the doorway. Can you hide something small? Isabella's smile was sharp. Ankle holster, lightweight .380. They'd have to strip search her to find it. Do it, Lucian said. Isabella nodded and left. Evelyn's pulse hammered. She'd just demanded a weapon. She'd just agreed to infiltrate a criminal operation. 3 weeks ago, she'd been a successful architect planning a future with Cameron Vance. Now she was planning to commit espionage. Get some rest, Lucian said. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Evelyn turned toward the door. Evelyn. She stopped but didn't turn around. You're stronger than you think, Lucian said quietly. That's why I chose you. The words should have felt like a compliment. Instead, they felt like a eulogy. What? The Bayonne facility looked exactly like its blueprints promised. Industrial, anonymous, surrounded by chain-link fence and concrete. A sign near the entrance read, Apex Construction Supply. Evelyn sat in the passenger seat of an unmarked sedan, staring at the building while her heart tried to hammer its way out of her chest. Isabella drove, dressed in business casual, playing the role of Evelyn's assistant. Remember, Isabella said for the third time, you're here to assess structural integrity for the renovation. You're professional, competent, slightly bored. They're expecting you. This is routine. Evelyn nodded, not trusting her voice. Isabella reached over and adjusted the wire hidden beneath Evelyn's blazer. Lucian's listening. So am I. So are 6 other people. You're not alone in there. I feel alone. Good. Use it. Fear makes you careful. Evelyn touched the ankle holster hidden beneath her slacks. The weight of the gun was both terrifying and strangely comforting. You ready? Isabella asked. No? Perfect. Let's go. They exited the car and walked toward the entrance. A security guard met them at the gate, checked their IDs against a clipboard, then waved them through. The warehouse interior was massive. 30-foot ceilings, rows of industrial shelving loaded with construction materials, forklifts moving between aisles. Everything looked legitimate, too legitimate. A man in a suit approached, hand extended. Mid-40s, expensive watch, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ms. Shaw, thank you for coming on such short notice. I'm Richard Torres, facility manager. Evelyn shook his hand, forcing her voice to stay steady. Mr. Torres, this is my assistant, Claire. Isabella nodded, her expression neutral. Right this way. Torres led them deeper into the warehouse. As I mentioned on the phone, we're expanding the mezzanine level. We need to ensure the existing support structure can handle the additional load. Evelyn pulled out a tablet and stylus, slipping into the role like a costume. What's the projected weight increase? Approximately 40,000 pounds distributed across the second floor. They walked through the warehouse while Torres explained the renovation plans. Evelyn took notes, asked technical questions, documented support columns and load-bearing walls. And all the while, she watched. Men moving crates that seemed too heavy for standard construction materials. Security cameras positioned at angles that covered more than just theft prevention. A locked door near the back with a keypad entry that Torres carefully avoided mentioning. The structural engineer's report is in my office, Torres said. If you'd like to review it, that would be helpful. They climbed a metal staircase to a second-floor office overlooking the warehouse floor. Through the window, Evelyn could see the entire operation, including 3 men unloading a container truck in a section Torres hadn't mentioned during the tour. She moved to the window, pretending to assess sightlines. What's happening in that back section? Torres's smile tightened. Overflow storage, nothing related to the renovation. Evelyn made a note on her tablet, her pulse spiking. In her ear, Lucian's voice crackled through the hidden receiver. Document everything you can see, wide angle if possible. She angled the tablet toward the window, using the camera to capture the truck, the men, the crates being moved with mechanical precision. Ms. Shaw? Evelyn turned. Torres was watching her with an expression that had shifted from professional to assessing. Sorry, she said quickly. Just making sure I understand the full layout. Structural analysis requires comprehensive context. Of course, Torres gestured toward his desk. The engineer's report. Evelyn crossed to the desk, her ankle brushing against the holster with each step. She flipped through the report, taking photos of key pages while Torres watched. Too closely. You're very thorough, Torres said. Architecture is detail-oriented work. Indeed. He moved slightly, positioning himself between Evelyn and the door. "Tell me, Ms. Shaw, how did you hear about this contract?" Evelyn's stomach dropped. "Through professional networks. Your RFP was circulated among several firms." "Interesting, because I don't recall issuing an RFP." The room went cold. In her ear, Lucian's voice. "Abort! Get out now!" But Torres was blocking the exit, and Isabella was still downstairs, too far to help. Evelyn forced her expression to stay confused. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. Your office contacted my firm directly. We have the emails. I'm sure you do." Torres's smile vanished completely. "What I don't understand is why Lucian Moretti's wife is suddenly interested in consulting for construction supply companies." Evelyn's blood turned to ice. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice betrayed her. Torres pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward her. It was a photo from the Met Gala. Evelyn standing beside Lucian, his hand on her waist, both of them dressed like they belonged in a magazine spread. The caption read, "Moretti makes power move with sudden marriage." "Congratulations on your wedding," Torres said, "though I'm curious why you're using your maiden name for business." Lucian's voice in her ear. "Isabella's moving. Stall him." "My professional reputation predates my marriage," Evelyn said, fighting to keep her voice level. "I maintain my maiden name for client consistency." "How professional." Torres stepped closer. "Let me be direct, Mrs. Moretti. You're not here for an architectural consultation. You're here because your husband is trying to interfere with operations that don't concern him. I genuinely don't know what—" "Stop lying," Torres's voice hardened. "You're wired. You've been photographing classified areas, and you're currently carrying a concealed weapon in an ankle holster." Evelyn's heart stopped. Torres gestured toward her leg. "Did you really think we wouldn't scan you? This facility has military-grade security. We detected the metal the moment you walked through the gate." The door burst open. Isabella appeared, gun drawn. "Step away from her." Torres didn't move. "You're outnumbered, outgunned, and trespassing. Lower your weapon or I'll have my men escort you both out in pieces." As if on cue, 3 armed guards appeared behind Isabella. Evelyn's hands shook. This was it. This was how it ended, in a warehouse in Bayonne, caught in a trap she'd walked into because Lucian had convinced her she was smart enough to pull it off. "Let her go," Isabella said. "Your issue is with Moretti, not with her. My issue is with anyone stupid enough to think they can spy on Marco Varelli without consequences." Torres pulled out his own phone. "Mr. Varelli is very interested in meeting Mrs. Moretti. I'm sure he has questions about her husband's expansion plans." In her ear, Lucian's voice was ice. "Federal agents are 2 minutes out. Isabella, keep them talking." But 2 minutes felt like a lifetime. Torres made a call. "We have visitors. The architect and her assistant. Yes, confirmed. Wired and armed. Bring the car around." Evelyn's vision blurred. She thought about her mother, about Jenna, about the life she'd had before Cameron destroyed it and Lucian promised to fix it. She thought about the gun strapped to her ankle, and she made a decision. Her hand dropped to her leg. "Don't," Torres warned. But Evelyn was already moving, already reaching for the holster, already knowing this was either survival or suicide. Isabella fired first. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Torres dove behind the desk. The guards rushed forward. Evelyn grabbed the gun from her ankle, her hand shaking so violently she could barely grip it. Isabella was engaged with 2 guards, moving with brutal efficiency, strikes, blocks, a vicious elbow that sent one man reeling. The 3rd guard turned toward Evelyn. She raised the gun. 2 hands, firm grip. "Breathe out when you squeeze." Isabella's training echoed in her mind. The guard drew his own weapon. Evelyn squeezed the trigger. The recoil shocked through her arms. The sound was catastrophic. The bullet went wide, shattering the office window behind Torres. The guard fired back. Evelyn felt the impact before she understood what had happened. A burning sensation in her left shoulder, sudden and absolute. She hit the ground hard, the gun clattering from her grip. Sirens erupted outside. Federal agents flooded the building, voices shouting commands, the situation dissolving into chaos. Evelyn lay on the floor, staring at the ceiling, watching blood seep through her blazer. Isabella's face appeared above her. "Stay with me." Medics are coming. I got shot, Evelyn said. Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. You're going to be fine. I tried to kill someone. You tried to survive. Isabella pressed something against Evelyn's shoulder. The pressure was agony. That's different. Evelyn's vision swam. She could hear Torres being arrested, guards being subdued, the controlled violence of a federal raid. And through it all, Lucian's voice in her ear, no longer controlled, no longer detached. Evelyn, stay conscious. Do you hear me? Stay conscious. But the darkness was easier. Evelyn let it pull her under, surrendering to the one thing she could still control. The choice to stop fighting. Just for a moment, just until the pain stopped burning through her shoulder and the fear stopped clawing at her chest, and the horrible certainty that she'd become someone unrecognizable finally, mercifully, faded into nothing. She woke in a hospital room with white walls and machines beeping steadily beside her bed. Lucian sat in a chair near the window, his suit wrinkled, his tie gone, his face carved with an expression Evelyn had never seen before. Fear. Raw, unconcealed, devastating. You're awake, he said. Evelyn tried to sit up. Pain exploded through her shoulder, forcing her back down. Don't move, Lucian said, crossing to her bed. You have 14 stitches and a cracked clavicle. The bullet went clean through, but you're going to be in pain for a while. How long was I out? 18 hours. You lost a lot of blood. They had to transfuse. Evelyn's throat was dry. Did they get Varelli? Torres is talking. He's giving up names, locations, operations. Varelli's network is collapsing as we speak. So it worked. At what cost? Lucian's voice was harsh. You were shot, Evelyn. You nearly died because I sent you into that facility thinking I could control every variable. You couldn't. No, I couldn't. Lucian sat on the edge of her bed, careful not to jostle her. I'm sorry. The words were so unexpected that Evelyn almost didn't process them. What? I'm sorry. For using you. For putting you in danger. For treating you like a piece in a game instead of a person I swore to protect. Lucian's hands clenched into fists. Isabella was right. I'm exactly like the men I claimed to be better than. Evelyn stared at him, at the cracks in his armor, at the guilt carved into every line of his face. Lucian, when I heard that gunshot through the wire, he continued, his voice breaking slightly, when Isabella said you were down, I thought... He stopped, unable to finish. You thought I was dead. Yes. Evelyn's chest tightened. She reached for his hand without thinking, her fingers closing around his. Lucian looked down at their joined hands like he didn't understand what was happening. I knew the risks, Evelyn said quietly. I chose to go in. You didn't force me. I manipulated you into it. Maybe, but I still made the choice. She squeezed his hand. And I'd make it again. Because Torres was right. I'm your wife. Whether it's real or fake or something in between. And that means Varelli's fight with you became my fight too. Lucian's jaw tightened. The contract? Fuck the contract. The words came out fierce, surprising them both. I'm not doing this because of a legal obligation anymore. I'm doing it because I'm tired of being a victim. Tired of letting men like Cameron and Varelli and even you decide what I'm capable of handling. Evelyn, I pulled the trigger, Lucian. I fired at that guard because I chose to fight instead of surrender. And yeah, I got shot. And yeah, it was terrifying. But I'm still here. I survived. Lucian stared at her, something shifting in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. You're different, he said quietly. Good. The old Evelyn was too easy to break. She met his eyes. This one won't be. For a long moment they sat in silence, hands still linked, something unspoken passing between them. Then Lucian's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, read the message, and his expression hardened. What is it? Evelyn asked. Varelli. He's been located. FBI is moving in within the hour. And Cameron? Lucian's eyes met hers. What about him? Torres said Varelli had informants, people feeding him information about your operations. Evelyn's stomach turned. Cameron was at the Met the same night Varelli's man appeared. He saw us together. He knew we were married. Lucian's expression went cold. You think Cameron's involved? I think he's desperate and angry and connected to people who wouldn't hesitate to use him. Evelyn forced herself to sit up despite the pain. We need to find out. You need to rest. I need answers. Her voice was steel. If Cameron sold me out to Varelli, I deserve to know. Lucian studied her for a long moment. Then he stood, pulling out his phone. I'll make some calls, he said, but you stay here. You're not cleared for discharge, and you're not walking into another operation with a bullet wound. Lucian, this isn't negotiable, Evelyn. You proved your strength. Now let me prove I can protect you without using you as bait. He left before she could argue. Evelyn lay back against the pillows, her shoulder throbbing, her mind racing. Somewhere in Manhattan, Cameron Vance was either a coward who'd abandoned her or a traitor who'd tried to get her killed. And in 6 hours, she'd know which. The old Evelyn would have been terrified. The new one was just angry. And anger, she was learning, was a far more useful emotion than fear. Evelyn discharged herself against medical advice 48 hours later. The doctor protested, cited infection risks and mobility concerns, then handed her a prescription for antibiotics and painkillers with an expression that said he'd seen this stubbornness before and knew better than to fight it. Her left arm was immobilized in a sling, her shoulder burning with every movement. But she could walk, and that was enough. Isabella met her in the hospital lobby wearing dark jeans and a leather jacket, her expression unreadable. You're an idiot, Isabella said by way of greeting. Probably. Evelyn signed the discharge papers with her good hand. Where's Lucian? Preparing for tonight. Tonight? Varelli's being moved from FBI custody to a federal holding facility. Lucian wants eyes on the transfer. Isabella's voice dropped. And he wants to talk to Cameron first. Evelyn's pulse spiked. He found him? Cameron's been staying at Sloane Hartwell's penthouse in Tribeca. Hasn't left in 3 days. Lucian's team has been monitoring his communications. Isabella paused. You're not going to like what they found. Tell me. Not here. Isabella gestured toward the exit. Cars waiting. They drove through Manhattan in silence, the city rushing past in a blur of steel and glass, and people who had no idea that beneath the surface a war was being fought in increments of violence and betrayal. Evelyn's shoulder throbbed with each bump in the road, but she refused the painkillers. She needed to be sharp. The safe house had changed since Evelyn left. More equipment now, monitors, computers, comm devices spread across tables like a military command center. 3 of Lucian's security team worked at various stations, their faces illuminated by screen glow. Lucian stood at the center of it all, studying a monitor displaying what looked like text message transcripts. He turned when Evelyn entered, his expression shifting from focused to alarmed. What the hell are you doing out of the hospital? Walking, talking, demanding answers. Evelyn crossed to him, ignoring the pain shooting through her shoulder. Isabella said you have proof about Cameron. Lucian's jaw tightened. He gestured to one of his team members. Pull up the Vance communications. The man typed rapidly. A new screen appeared filled with text messages, timestamps, phone records. Lucian pointed to a series of exchanges dated 2 months ago. Cameron Vance has been in contact with Richard Torres since September, long before you and I met. Evelyn leaned closer, her good hand gripping the table edge. The messages were coded, but obvious once you knew what to look for. References to opportunities, mutual interests, information exchange. He was feeding them intelligence, Evelyn said, her voice hollow, about my development projects, construction timelines, permit applications, everything that would help Varelli anticipate my expansion into port-adjacent real estate. Lucian scrolled through more messages. Torres paid him $20,000 over 6 weeks, deposited into an offshore account Cameron thought was untraceable. Evelyn's vision blurred. Why would he do this? He's not a criminal. He's just desperate. Lucian pulled up another file. Bank statements, campaign finance reports. Cameron's political run burned through money faster than he could fundraise. He was drowning in debt. Torres approached him at a donor event, offered easy cash for harmless information. Cameron convinced himself it was just business intelligence, nothing illegal. Until it was. Until the night at the Met, when Varelli's operative made contact and Cameron realized he'd been feeding information to organized crime. Lucian's voice was steel. He panicked, tried to distance himself, but by then, Varelli had leverage. Evelyn stared at the evidence, her mind racing. Cameron hadn't just humiliated her. He'd sold information that put her directly in Varelli's crosshairs. Every threat, every moment of fear, every second she'd spent looking over her shoulder, all of it traced back to Cameron's greed and cowardice. "Where is he now?" she asked. "Still at Sloane's penthouse. He thinks he's safe because Varelli's in custody. He doesn't know Torres is cooperating with the FBI. And when he finds out, he'll run." Lucian met her eyes. "Which is why we're moving tonight, before he has the chance." "We?" "I'm bringing him in, making sure he answers for what he did." "To who? The FBI?" "To you." Lucian's voice was quiet but absolute. "You deserve to face him, to hear him admit what he put you through. After that, the feds can have him." Evelyn's throat tightened. Part of her wanted exactly that. Wanted to see Cameron's face when he realized his betrayal had been exposed, wanted him to understand the magnitude of his cowardice. But another part, the part that had pulled a trigger in that Bayonne warehouse, wanted something else entirely. "I'm coming with you," she said. "Absolutely not. You're injured. I'm coming with you, or I'm going alone." Evelyn's voice was flat. "Your choice." Lucian and Evelyn stared at each other, locked in a silent battle neither wanted to lose. Isabella spoke from the doorway. "Let her come. She's earned it. She's been shot. And she's still standing. That counts for something." Isabella moved into the room. "Besides, Cameron's more likely to talk if Evelyn's there. He'll try to manipulate her, appeal to their history. That's when people make mistakes." Lucian's hands clenched into fists. Finally, he nodded. "Fine, but you stay in the car until I clear the apartment. Non-negotiable." "Agreed," Evelyn lied. They both knew it was a lie, but Lucian let it stand anyway. Sloane Hartwell's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a glass tower overlooking the Hudson. Doorman building, private elevator, security that looked expensive and competent. Evelyn sat in the back of the Mercedes with Isabella while Lucian and 2 of his team entered through the service entrance. Her shoulder ached, her hands were clammy, and her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. "You okay?" Isabella asked. "No." "Good. Fear keeps you careful." Isabella checked her weapon. Smooth, efficient, the movement so practiced it was almost casual. "You remember what we talked about?" "Stay behind Lucian. Don't engage unless there's no choice. Aim center mass." "And?" "Breathe." Isabella smiled grimly. "You're learning." Lucian's voice crackled through the comm unit in Isabella's ear. "Penthouse is clear. 2 occupants, Cameron and Sloane. No security inside the apartment, bringing them down." "Copy," Isabella said. She looked at Evelyn. "We're moving to the lobby. Stay close." They exited the car and entered the building. The doorman barely glanced at them. Isabella had that effect, moved with the kind of authority that made people assume she belonged wherever she was. The elevator descended from the penthouse. Evelyn watched the numbers tick down, her pulse accelerating with each floor. 40, 35, 20. The doors opened. Lucian stepped out first, his hand firm on Cameron's arm. Cameron looked like he'd aged a decade. Rumpled clothes, unshaven, eyes red-rimmed and wild. Behind them, Sloane walked with her head high, her expression icy and defiant. Then Cameron saw Evelyn. His face went white. "Oh, God, Evelyn." "Shut up," Lucian said. Not loud, not aggressive, just absolute. Cameron shut up. They moved through the lobby toward a back exit where another vehicle waited. Evelyn fell into step beside Lucian, her eyes locked on Cameron. He wouldn't look at her, kept his gaze on the floor, his breathing shallow and ragged. Coward. The word crystallized in Evelyn's mind with perfect clarity. Not villain, not mastermind, just a coward who'd made a series of small, selfish choices that had snowballed into catastrophe. They reached the second vehicle, a black SUV with tinted windows. Lucian opened the door and pushed Cameron inside. Sloane followed, her movements stiff with barely controlled rage. "You can't do this," Sloane said. "We haven't committed any crime. This is kidnapping." "Call the police," Isabella said pleasantly. "Tell them Lucian Moretti is detaining the man who's been feeding intelligence to Marco Varelli's criminal organization. I'm sure they'll rush right over." Sloane's face went pale. Isabella climbed into the driver's seat. Lucian gestured for Evelyn to get in. She slid in beside Cameron, her injured shoulder pressing against the seat back, pain radiating down her arm. Cameron flinched away like she was contagious. Lucian sat on Cameron's other side, effectively trapping him. The door closed. The SUV pulled away from the curb. For 30 seconds, nobody spoke. Then Cameron broke. "I didn't know. You have to believe me. I didn't know who Torres was working for until it was too late." "When did you figure it out?" Evelyn's voice was eerily calm. "The gala, at the Met, when I saw that man watching you." Cameron's hands shook. "Torres called me that night, told me to back off, that Varelli was interested in you now. That's when I realized that you'd sold information that put me in danger. I never meant for that to happen. I swear. I thought it was just corporate intelligence, business competition. I didn't know it was organized crime. You took money for information about Lucian's operations." Evelyn's voice was ice. "You didn't ask questions because you didn't want to know the answers. I was desperate. My campaign was failing. I had debts. Sloane's family wanted proof I could operate in their world, and I was drowning." Cameron's voice cracked. $20,000 seemed like nothing. Just information. Just data. "Just my life," Evelyn said quietly. Cameron finally looked at her. His eyes were red, his face haggard. "I'm sorry. God, Evelyn, I'm so sorry. If I could take it back. But you can't." Evelyn leaned forward despite the pain. "You can't take back the threats. The fear. The fact that I got shot because of intelligence you provided." Cameron's face crumpled. "You were shot?" "Bayonne warehouse. Federal raid. A guard put a bullet through my shoulder because I was trying to stop Varelli's operation. The operation you helped facilitate. I never wanted—" "What did you want, Cameron?" Evelyn's voice rose. "When you humiliated me at the Apex Club, when you removed my ring in front of 200 people, what exactly did you think would happen? That I'd just disappear? That there'd be no consequences? I thought you'd move on. Find someone else. I didn't think you'd marry Lucian Moretti. And that's my fault? That I survived your betrayal? You didn't survive." Cameron's voice turned bitter. "You became exactly like him. Cold, calculating, willing to do whatever it takes." "Good." Evelyn's smile was sharp. "Because the woman you destroyed wouldn't have lasted a week in this world. But the one I became? She's the reason you're sitting in this car instead of running to whatever offshore account you thought would save you." Cameron stared at her, something like recognition dawning in his expression. "You're not here for closure. You're here for revenge." "I'm here for the truth." Evelyn glanced at Lucian. "And then I'm here to watch you face consequences." The SUV pulled into an underground parking garage. Not the warehouse, somewhere new. Evelyn didn't recognize it. "Where are we?" Sloane demanded. "Neutral ground," Lucian said. "Somewhere the FBI can pick you up without drawing attention." "The FBI?" Cameron's voice pitched higher. "You're turning us over? You're going to confess everything. Torres, Varelli, every piece of intelligence you sold, every payment you took, all of it." "I can't. They'll destroy me, my career, my reputation." "You destroyed those yourself." Lucian's voice was merciless. "Now you're going to do the one useful thing you're capable of. You're going to testify. And maybe, if you're convincing enough, the prosecutor will offer a deal that keeps you out of prison. And if I refuse, then Varelli's associates will assume you cooperated anyway. Either way, you're finished. But at least this way, you might survive." Cameron's breathing turned ragged. He looked at Sloane, who was staring straight ahead. Her jaw clenched so tight, Evelyn could see the muscle jumping. "Did you know?" Evelyn asked Sloane. "About Torres? About the money?" Sloane's eyes cut toward her. "I knew Cameron was in debt. I didn't ask where the money came from." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." Sloane's voice was cold. "Cameron's mistakes aren't my responsibility. But you benefited from them. You got the perfect political partner, the narrative you wanted, the story of trading up from a struggling architect to a hotel heiress. Did it ever occur to you that the foundation was built on crimes?" "People like you don't understand how this world works," Sloane said. "You think morality matters. It doesn't. Only power matters. Who has it, who wants it, and what they're willing to do to get it." "And what were you willing to do?" Sloane smiled, sharp and humorless. Anything except get caught. The SUV stopped. The parking garage was empty except for another vehicle 20 feet away. Unmarked sedan, government plates. 2 FBI agents stood beside it. Cameron saw them and went rigid. No, this isn't. I need time. I need to talk to a lawyer. You'll get one, Lucian said, after you give your initial statement. He opened the door and pulled Cameron out. Isabella did the same with Sloane. The FBI agents approached, badges already out. Cameron Vance, Sloane Hartwell, we have questions regarding your communications with Richard Torres and Marco Varelli's organization. Cameron looked back at Evelyn one last time. His expression was desperate, pleading, pathetic. I loved you, he said. That was real. Everything else was a mistake, but that was real. Evelyn stared at him, at this man who'd proposed on a Brooklyn pier and promised her a future, and then destroyed her in front of cameras because it was convenient. No, she said quietly. You loved the version of me that made you look good. The moment I stopped being useful, I stopped being real to you. She turned away before he could respond. Behind her, she heard the agents reading Cameron his rights, heard Sloane's sharp protests, heard car doors slamming, then silence. Evelyn stood in the parking garage with Lucian and Isabella, her shoulder throbbing, her hands shaking, her entire body buzzing with adrenaline and exhaustion. It's done, Lucian said. Is it? Evelyn looked at him. Cameron's in custody. Torres is cooperating, but Varelli's still alive, still dangerous. The FBI has him. For now. But men like that don't stay locked up forever. They have lawyers, resources, connections. Evelyn's voice was steady despite the tremor in her hands. When does this actually end? Lucian was quiet for a long moment. Then, when Varelli's organization is dismantled completely, when every connection is severed, every asset seized, every associate either arrested or neutralized. How long will that take? Weeks? Maybe months. And until then? Until then, you stay protected. We maintain the arrangement. We finish what we started. Evelyn turned to face him fully. The contract expires in 4 months. Are you planning to extend it? The question hung between them. Lucian's expression was unreadable. Do you want me to? I don't know. Evelyn's voice was honest. A month ago, this was just survival, just revenge. But now, she gestured at her injured shoulder. Now I've been shot. I've pulled a trigger. I've watched the man I almost married confess to crimes that nearly got me killed. Nothing about this is what I signed up for. Then leave. Lucian's voice was flat. The contract has an exit clause. You can walk away right now, take the money and disappear. Can I? Evelyn stepped closer. Can I really disappear, or will Varelli's people find me anyway? Will I spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering when someone's going to finish what they started? I'll make sure you're protected. I don't want protection. The words came out fierce. I want this over. I want Varelli gone. Not arrested, not transferred, gone. Lucian's eyes narrowed. What are you saying? I'm saying the FBI moves slow, the legal system moves slower. And while they're building their case, we're all sitting targets. Evelyn's hands clenched into fists. You know how to end this faster. I've seen enough to know you have methods the FBI won't touch. Evelyn, don't protect me from the truth, not anymore. Her voice was steel. If you want Varelli eliminated, do it, but let me help. Absolutely not. Why not? Because I'm a civilian? Because I got shot? Evelyn laughed, harsh and bitter. I stopped being a civilian the moment I married you, and getting shot just taught me how to survive people who want me dead. You don't know what you're asking. I'm asking to stop being a victim. I'm asking to take control of my own safety instead of depending on you or the FBI or anyone else. Evelyn met his eyes. Teach me. Use me. Whatever it takes. But stop treating me like I'm made of glass. Isabella spoke from behind them. She's serious. I know she's serious, Lucian snapped. That's the problem. Is it? Isabella moved closer. Because from where I'm standing, Evelyn just proved she's more capable than half your team. She walked into a hostile facility, maintained cover under interrogation, and defended herself when it mattered. Those aren't civilian skills. She's not trained. Then train her. Isabella's voice was matter-of-fact. You wanted a wife who could operate in your world. You got one. Now deal with it. Lucian stared at both of them, his jaw tight, his hands clenched. Finally, he pulled out his phone and made a call. "It's me," he said when someone answered. "Accelerate the Varelli timeline. I want options for direct action within 48 hours. He paused, listening. "I don't care about the risks. Just give me options." He ended the call and looked at Evelyn. "You want in?" he said. "You're in, but you follow my rules. You train with Isabella. You don't move without clearance. And if I tell you to abort, you abort. Understood?" Evelyn nodded. "Understood." "Good." Lucian's expression was grim. "Because what comes next is going to be a lot worse than Bayonne." Batsimad. The training started immediately. Isabella worked Evelyn like a drill sergeant, pushing her past exhaustion, past pain, past every instinct that screamed to quit. They trained in the warehouse gym despite Evelyn's injured shoulder, modified exercises that built strength without compromising the wound. Hand-to-hand combat, firearms drills, tactical movement, how to clear a room, how to assess threats, how to kill someone if necessary. "Pain is just information," Isabella said, watching Evelyn struggle through another repetition. "Your body's telling you something's wrong. Acknowledge it and keep moving." Evelyn's shoulder screamed. Sweat dripped into her eyes. Her muscles shook with fatigue, but she kept moving. Between sessions, Lucian briefed her on Varelli's operation. Shipping routes, safe houses, known associates. The intelligence was granular, detailed, compiled over months of surveillance. Varelli's being held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, Lucian explained, pointing to a map. He's scheduled for transfer to a federal facility upstate in 72 hours. That transfer is our window. You're planning to intercept? I'm planning to create an opportunity. Prison transports follow predictable routes with minimal security compared to the facility itself. If something were to happen during transit, an accident, a delay, a complication, it would give us access. Us, Evelyn repeated. My team. Isabella. And you, if you're still committed. Evelyn's pulse hammered. What's my role? You'll be in a support vehicle, monitoring communications, providing real-time intel on law enforcement response. If anything goes wrong, you coordinate evacuation. So I'm still sitting in a car. You're coordinating a military precision operation. That's not nothing. But it's not front line. Lucian's expression hardened. You're not ready for front line. Then make me ready. You have 72 hours. Evelyn, you said if I was in, I was in. So put me in. They stared at each other, the tension crackling. Isabella interrupted from the doorway. Let her prove herself. One final test. If she passes, she's on the team. If she fails, she rides support. What kind of test? Evelyn asked. Isabella's smile was sharp. The kind that shows whether you can handle real pressure. The test came at midnight. Isabella drove Evelyn to a warehouse district in Queens, deserted and industrial. The kind of place where screams wouldn't carry. They parked beside a building with broken windows and graffiti-tagged walls. Inside, Isabella said, second floor, you'll find a target. Neutralize it and extract the intelligence packet it's carrying. You have 15 minutes. Evelyn stared at the building. What kind of target? You'll find out. Isabella handed her a loaded handgun and a small flashlight. Clock starts when you enter. Evelyn took the weapon, checked the chamber, then looked at Isabella. This is insane. This is your career audition, pass or fail. Isabella gestured toward the building. Move. Evelyn exited the car and approached the warehouse. Her shoulder ached, her hands were sweaty on the gun grip, but her mind was clear. She entered through a side door, the hinges shrieking. Inside, darkness pressed in from all sides. She clicked on the flashlight, sweeping the beam across debris-strewn floors and collapsed shelving. A sound. Footsteps. Second floor. Evelyn moved toward the stairs, placing each foot carefully, controlling her breathing the way Isabella had taught her. The stairs creaked under her weight. She paused, listening. Nothing. She reached the second-floor landing. A long hallway stretched ahead, doors on either side, most of them open. Another sound, this time to her left. Evelyn pivoted, raising the gun, flashlight beam cutting through shadows. A figure stood in the doorway, Tall, male, wearing a tactical vest. He raised his hands. "Don't shoot." Evelyn's finger tightened on the trigger. "Who are you?" "Your test." The man's voice was calm. "I'm carrying the intelligence packet. You need to take it from me without killing me. Think you can manage that?" Evelyn's pulse hammered. This was the test, not just marksmanship, but judgment under pressure. "Drop the packet," she said. "No. I have a gun. And I have orders to resist. So what are you going to do? Shoot me? Prove you can kill on command? Or find another way?" Evelyn's mind raced. Shooting him failed the test, showed she defaulted to lethal force. But letting him escape also failed. She needed a third option. Evelyn lowered the gun slightly. "You're right. I could shoot you, but that would be loud, messy, and stupid." She stepped forward. "So instead, I'm going to ask nicely. Give me the packet." "No." Evelyn moved fast, exactly the way Isabella had trained her. She closed the distance, drove her good shoulder into the man's chest, knocked him off balance. He stumbled back and she swept his leg, sending him to the floor. Before he could recover, she had the gun pressed against his throat. "Packet," she said. "Now." The man smiled. Then he pulled an envelope from his vest and handed it over. "Nicely done, Mrs. Moretti." Evelyn stood, her shoulders screaming, her breath coming in gasps. She opened the envelope. Inside was a single card with 2 words. "You pass." Isabella's voice echoed from somewhere nearby. 12 minutes. Not bad for a civilian." Evelyn turned. Isabella stood in the hallway, arms crossed, looking almost proud. "You're in," Isabella said. "Welcome to the team." 72 hours later, Evelyn sat in the back of an unmarked van 3 blocks from the Brooklyn Bridge, watching multiple video feeds on a laptop screen. One showed the Metropolitan Detention Center entrance. Another tracked the prison transport vehicle, a reinforced bus with tinted windows and armed guards. Lucian's voice crackled through her earpiece. "Transport is moving. ETA to intercept point. 8 minutes." "Copy," Evelyn said. Her hands were steady on the keyboard despite her racing pulse. Isabella was in position on the bridge with 2 other team members. Their job was to create a controlled accident. Nothing lethal, just enough chaos to force the transport to stop. Lucian was in a secondary vehicle, ready to move in during the confusion. And Evelyn was running Overwatch, monitoring police channels, coordinating timing, making sure no one got caught. "Traffic cams show NYPD units 2 miles south," Evelyn reported. "You have a 4-minute window before they respond to any incident." "Understood," Lucian said. "Isabella, status?" "In position. Ready on your mark." Evelyn watched the transport bus navigate through Brooklyn traffic. Inside that bus, Marco Varelli sat in restraints, probably confident he'd lawyer his way out of federal charges within months. He was wrong. 30 seconds, Lucian said. Evelyn's hands hovered over the keyboard, ready to jam police communications if needed. 10 seconds. The transport bus entered the bridge. "Mark." Isabella's vehicle pulled out from a side street, timed perfectly to force the bus driver to brake hard. Tires shrieked. The bus swerved, clipping a barrier, then lurched to a stop. Exactly as planned. Guards poured out of the transport, hands on weapons, assessing the situation. Lucian's vehicle appeared from the opposite direction. Not aggressive, not threatening, just a civilian vehicle caught in traffic, except Lucian was already out, moving with brutal efficiency. Evelyn watched through the traffic cam feed, her pulse hammering. This was real. This was happening. Lucian approached the guards, hands visible, expression calm. He said something. Evelyn couldn't hear through the camera feed, and one of the guards relaxed slightly. Mistake. Lucian moved. Fast, controlled, devastating. The first guard went down before he could draw his weapon. The second tried to radio for backup, but Isabella was already there, neutralizing him with clinical precision. 30 seconds. That's all it took. Lucian entered the transport bus. Evelyn held her breath. Police radio chatter erupted. Units respond to bridge incident. Possible assault on federal transport. Lucian, you have 90 seconds, Evelyn said into the comm. NYPD is responding. Copy. Inside the bus, Lucian found Varelli. The man was still restrained, still in federal custody, still technically untouchable. Lucian leaned close, said something Evelyn couldn't hear. Varelli's face went white. Then Lucian straightened and walked away. Just walked away. Evelyn's confusion spiked. "Lucian, what are you doing? You didn't—" "I didn't need to." Lucian's voice was calm as he returned to his vehicle. "I just needed him to know I could have." "That's it? That's the plan?" "That's the message. Marco Varelli just learned that federal custody doesn't protect him from me. That if I want him dead, no prison, no lawyer, no amount of money will save him." Lucian's vehicle pulled away from the scene. Fear is more effective than violence, and he's terrified now. Evelyn stared at the screen, watching guards scramble, watching Varelli sit frozen in his seat, watching the whole operation dissolve into chaos. And she understood. This wasn't about killing Varelli. It was about breaking him, making him realize he'd lost. That his empire was gone, his protection was illusion, and his only hope of survival was cooperation. "All units clear," Isabella reported. "No casualties. NYPD arriving in 30 seconds. "Extract," Lucian ordered. Evelyn watched the feeds as the team dissolved into traffic, anonymous and invisible, leaving behind nothing but confusion and one very terrified criminal. Her phone buzzed. Text from Lucian. "Well done. You just ran your first operation." Evelyn sat back, her heart still racing, her hands still steady. She'd crossed a line tonight, moved from victim to participant, from protected to protector. And the terrifying part wasn't that she'd done it. It was that she'd been good at it. Varelli started talking within 6 hours. The FBI contacted Lucian's attorney with an offer: comprehensive cooperation in exchange for protective custody and a reduced sentence. Varelli gave up names, locations, financial records, everything. His organization collapsed like a house of cards. Arrests happened across 3 states. Assets were seized. Associates scrambled for their own deals. And through it all, Evelyn watched from the warehouse, monitoring news feeds and legal filings, witnessing the systematic destruction of the man who'd threatened her life. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down at a drop she couldn't come back from. Lucian found her on the warehouse roof 3 days later, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. "It's over," he said. "Varelli's done. Cameron's testifying. Torres is in witness protection. Every threat has been neutralized." "So what happens now?" Evelyn asked. "Now you decide." Lucian moved to stand beside her. "The contract has 3 months left. You can fulfill it, take your money, and walk away. Or we renegotiate." Evelyn turned to look at him. "Renegotiate what?" "The terms, the timeline, the nature of our arrangement." Lucian's voice was careful. "The last few weeks have changed things. We're not the same people who signed that contract." "No," Evelyn agreed. "We're not. So the question is, what do you want?" Evelyn stared at him, at this man who'd offered her revenge and protection and danger in equal measure, who'd treated her like an asset until she proved she was more, who'd stood between her and every threat until she learned to stand herself. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Then we have 3 months to figure it out." Lucian's expression softened slightly. No pressure, no obligations beyond what's already contracted, just time. "And after 3 months?" "After 3 months, you decide whether you want to walk away or stay. Either way, you'll be safe, you'll be compensated, and you'll have choices." Evelyn's throat tightened. "What about you? What do you want?" Lucian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I want you to choose to stay, not because of money or safety or revenge, but because you want to." The admission hung between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Evelyn's pulse hammered. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 weeks ago, broken, humiliated, desperate. And she thought about the woman she'd become, scarred, capable, dangerous. She didn't know which version was real anymore, maybe both, maybe neither. 3 months, she said finally. "And then we see." Lucian nodded. 3 months. He extended his hand. Evelyn shook it, feeling the same cold certainty she'd felt that first night in the Mercedes. Except this time, it wasn't fear. It was possibility. And that was somehow more terrifying than anything that had come before. Because for the first time since Cameron had destroyed her life, Evelyn Shaw, now Evelyn Moretti, had a choice. Not between survival and death, but between who she'd been and who she was becoming. And in 3 months, she'd have to decide which one she wanted to keep. 3 months became a strange kind of limbo. Evelyn moved back into the penthouse overlooking the Hudson, but the space felt different now. Less like a cage, more like a headquarters. She kept her own bedroom, maintained her own schedule, and Isabella stopped watching her like a potential threat. The security team knew her name. The staff nodded when she passed. Somewhere in the transition from contract wife to actual presence, she'd become part of the infrastructure. But the question remained unanswered. What came after? The contract's expiration date loomed like a deadline neither of them wanted to discuss. Lucian worked longer hours, left earlier each morning, came home later each night. When they did cross paths, their conversations were careful, measured, stripped of anything that resembled vulnerability. How was your day? Productive. Yours? Fine. Then silence. Evelyn filled the time with architecture. She'd started taking freelance consulting projects. Nothing that connected to Lucian's world, just clean work that reminded her who she'd been before everything shattered. Her firm had reached out twice about returning full-time. She'd deflected both times, unsure what answer to give when she didn't know where she'd be living in 3 weeks. Isabella found her in the penthouse library one afternoon, surrounded by blueprints and coffee cups, working through structural calculations for a museum renovation in Boston. "You're avoiding him," Isabella said, sitting down without invitation. Evelyn didn't look up. "I'm working." "You're hiding in floor plans because facing Lucian means facing a decision you're not ready to make." Evelyn's pencil stilled. She set it down carefully. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth." Isabella leaned back. "Do you love him?" The question landed like a physical blow. Evelyn's throat tightened. "That's not what this arrangement was about." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." Evelyn met Isabella's eyes. "Your brother offered me a contract. Money, protection, revenge. Love was never part of the terms. And yet here you are, 3 months later, still living in his home, still wearing his ring, still pretending this is just business." Evelyn looked down at her left hand. The wedding band was simple. White gold, no stones, the kind of ring you'd barely notice except that it never came off. She'd stopped thinking about it weeks ago, stopped registering its presence. But it was there, always there. "I don't know what I feel," Evelyn said quietly. "I know I'm grateful. I know I'm safer with him than without him. I know that when I got shot, the first voice I heard was his, and it sounded like fear, not calculation." "Then tell him that." "And say what? That I've developed feelings for the man who married me as a business transaction? That I can't tell the difference between genuine emotion and trauma bonding? That I'm terrified of walking away and equally terrified of staying?" "Yes." Isabella's voice was matter-of-fact. "Say exactly that. Because Lucian's sitting in his office right now asking himself the same questions, and neither of you will survive the next 3 weeks if you keep pretending this is still about a contract." Evelyn stared at her. "He feels the same way? I'm not his therapist. Ask him yourself." Isabella stood. "But do it soon, because the contract expires in 18 days, and after that, whatever this is either becomes real or it ends. There's no middle ground." She left. Evelyn sat alone in the library, staring at blueprints that suddenly seemed irrelevant. 18 days. She pulled out her phone and stared at Lucian's contact information for a full minute before typing. "Can we talk? Tonight?" His response came immediately. "My office. 8 p.m. Evelyn's pulse hammered. She looked at the clock. 6 hours. 6 hours to figure out what the hell she was going to say. Ban. Lucian's office was on the top floor of the Moretti building in Midtown. Glass walls, minimalist furniture, a view of Manhattan that probably cost more per square foot than most people made in a year. Evelyn had been here once before, weeks ago, when she'd needed to sign additional legal documents related to the contract. She'd hated it then. Too cold, too impersonal. Now it just felt like Lucian, controlled, precise, fortified against anything resembling chaos. He stood by the windows when she entered, hands in his pockets, silhouetted against the city lights. He didn't turn around. "Close the door," he said. Evelyn did. The The click of the latch felt final. She crossed to stand beside him, both of them staring out at Manhattan like it held answers neither could find inside the room. 18 days, Lucian said. I know. I've had my attorney draft 2 documents. One extends the contract for another year with modified terms and increased compensation. The other terminates the arrangement, transfers the full payment to your account, and releases both of us from all obligations. Evelyn's chest tightened. Which one do you want me to sign? Neither. She turned to look at him. His profile was sharp in the ambient light, his jaw tight, his expression unreadable. I don't understand, she said. I want you to tear them both up. Lucian finally looked at her. I don't want another contract. I don't want modified terms or extended timelines. I want to know if you're staying because you choose to, not because I'm paying you. Lucian, I've spent 3 months trying to convince myself this was still transactional, that you were still the desperate woman I found outside the Apex Club, and I was still the pragmatic businessman using her for legitimacy. His voice was rough. But that stopped being true the moment you walked into that Bayonne warehouse. Maybe before. Evelyn's throat closed. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want a wife on contract. I want you. Actually you. Messy and damaged and terrifyingly capable. I want to wake up knowing you're here because you chose me, not because I structured an agreement that made staying easier than leaving. And if I can't give you that, if I don't know how to separate what I feel from what I've survived, then we figure it out together. Lucian stepped closer. But I need to know you're willing to try. Not for money, not for safety, just because you want to. Evelyn stared at him, at the cracks in his armor, at the vulnerability he was offering like a weapon he'd put down. I'm terrified, she admitted, of trusting this, of believing it's real. Cameron destroyed me by making promises he didn't keep. You saved me by keeping promises you didn't make. I don't know how to navigate anything in between. Then don't navigate. Just stay. Or leave. But make it your choice, not a calculation. Evelyn's hands shook. She pressed them against her thighs, trying to steady herself. What if I choose wrong? There's no wrong choice. There's just what you want versus what you think you should want. And what do you want? Lucian reached for her hand, carefully, like he was afraid she'd pull away. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid and impossible to misinterpret. I want you to stay, he said quietly. Not as Mrs. Moretti, contract wife and strategic asset, but as Evelyn. The woman who survived Cameron Vance and Marco Varelli and a bullet through the shoulder. The woman who learned to shoot in 3 weeks and ran a federal operation without flinching. The woman who's sitting in my library at 2 a.m. working on museum renovations because she still believes in building things. Evelyn's vision blurred. You've been watching me work? I've been watching you rebuild yourself. It's the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen. The words broke something in her chest. Evelyn pulled her hand free, not to escape, but to press both palms against her face, trying to hold herself together. I don't know how to do this, she said, her voice muffled. I don't know how to be with someone without a contract defining the boundaries, without rules, without an exit strategy. Then we make new rules, together. Not terms and clauses, but actual agreements between 2 people trying not to destroy each other. Evelyn lowered her hands. What kind of agreements? Honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Space when either of us needs it. No more treating each other like business partners pretending to be married. Lucian's expression was raw. And if it doesn't work, if we try this and it falls apart, we walk away without lawyers or negotiations or recriminations. Just 2 people who tried and failed. That's terrifying. I know. But also the only thing that makes sense. Lucian's lips curved into something that almost resembled a smile. So is that a yes? It's a maybe. Evelyn stepped closer. I need time. Not 3 months, not 18 days, just time to figure out who I am when I'm not surviving something. And then I'll know if this is real or just trauma making me dependent on the person who saved me. How much time? However long it takes. She met his eyes. Can you live with that? Lucian was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. On one condition. What? You stay in the penthouse, not as my contracted wife, not as a guest, but as someone I'm dating, for lack of a better term, someone I'm trying to build something real with, even if we don't know what that something is yet. Dating, Evelyn tested the word. We got married before we ever went on a date. Then we're doing this backwards. Seems appropriate. Despite everything, Evelyn laughed. A real laugh. Not bitter or broken, just genuine. You're seriously asking me to date my own husband? I'm asking you to let me take you to dinner, and maybe breakfast, and whatever comes between. Lucian's voice softened. No contracts, no obligations, just us figuring out if this works when we're not fighting for survival. Evelyn stared at him, at this impossible man who'd offered her revenge wrapped in legal documents and somehow ended up offering her something far more dangerous. Hope. Okay, she said, but I'm keeping my own bedroom. Agreed. And my own schedule. Naturally. And if Isabella makes one more comment about us being emotionally constipated, I'm moving out. Lucian's smile was real now. I'll talk to her. Good. Evelyn extended her hand. Then we have a deal. Lucian took her hand and pulled her closer instead of shaking it. His other hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. I'm going to kiss you now, he said, not because a photographer's watching or because we're maintaining appearances, but because I want to. Is that okay? Evelyn's pulse hammered. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Lucian kissed her. It was nothing like their wedding kiss, that brief clinical contact designed for cameras. This was slow, deliberate, devastating. His hand slid into her hair, angling her head, and Evelyn's fingers gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucian rested his forehead against hers. Still terrified? He asked. Absolutely. Good, me too. They stood like that for a long moment. Two people who'd married as strangers and somehow ended up here, vulnerable, uncertain, but choosing each other anyway. Outside, Manhattan glittered with 1,000 stories of people trying to survive, to thrive, to build something that mattered. And for the first time in months, Evelyn believed she might be one of them. The next 3 weeks felt like learning a new language. Lucian took her to dinner at restaurants where nobody cared about their marriage certificate or public image. They walked through Central Park without security trailing them. They fought about stupid things, his obsessive organization, her habit of leaving coffee cups everywhere, and learned to apologize without lawyers mediating. Slowly, carefully, they built something that resembled normal. Isabella watched it all with an expression somewhere between approval and exasperation. You two are the most dysfunctional, functional couple I've ever seen, she said one night over takeout in the penthouse. We're working on it, Evelyn said. You're overthinking it. Says the woman who threatened to shoot me when we first met. I was protecting my brother. And now, Isabella's smile was sharp. Now I'm protecting you both. From each other, mostly. Evelyn laughed. Over the past weeks, Isabella had become something unexpected. Not quite a friend, but not quite the hostile guard dog either. Something in between. An ally, maybe. Someone who understood what it meant to survive in Lucian's world. The contract's official expiration date came and went without ceremony. Evelyn woke that morning to find an envelope on her nightstand. Inside was a cashier's check for $500,000 and a handwritten note from Lucian. Contract fulfilled. You're free to go or stay. Either way, this is yours. L. Evelyn stared at the check for a long time. Then she got dressed, walked to Lucian's office, and handed it back. What's this? He asked, looking up from his laptop. Your money. The contract specified. I don't want it. Evelyn sat down across from him. I didn't stay for the money. I stayed because I wanted to. Taking it now feels like payment for something that stopped being transactional months ago. Lucian set down his coffee. Evelyn, you earned that. You risked your life. I chose to risk my life. I chose to stay. I chose you. She pushed the check back across the desk. And if we're doing this, actually doing this, then it starts with me not being compensated for my presence. That's not... It is. Her voice was firm. I need to know I'm here because I want to be, not because you paid me. So keep the money, or donate it, or burn it. I don't care. But I'm not taking it. Lucian stared at her, something raw and unguarded in his expression. Then he tore the check in half. Then it's gone, he said quietly. No money, no contract. Just us. Evelyn's throat tightened. Just us. Lucian stood and crossed to her side of the desk. He knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "Marry me," he said. Evelyn's breath caught. "We're already married?" "Legally. On paper. In a city hall with strangers as witnesses." Lucian's grip tightened. "I want to marry you for real. No contracts, no timelines, no strategy. Just you and me and a promise that actually means something." Tears burned in Evelyn's eyes. "Lucian, I love you." The words came out rough, like he'd been holding them back for months. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe at the Met when you faced Cameron without flinching. Maybe in Bayonne when you pulled that trigger. Maybe the first night when you signed a contract with a stranger because you were angry enough to bet everything on revenge." His voice cracked. "But I love you. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice by staying." Evelyn couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the weight of his words settling into the spaces she'd kept guarded since Cameron had destroyed her. "I love you too," she whispered, "and it terrifies me." "Good." Lucian's smile was shaky. "We'll be terrified together." Evelyn pulled him up and kissed him, hard, desperate, honest. When they broke apart, both of them were crying. "So is that a yes?" Lucian asked. "It's a yes." Evelyn wiped her eyes. "But I'm planning the wedding this time, and I'm inviting actual friends, not business associates. Whatever you want. And we're doing it at the place where we first met." Lucian's eyebrows rose. "The Apex Club? The rooftop where Cameron tried to destroy me and you offered me a way out." Evelyn's smile was fierce. "I want to replace that memory with something real." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." She kissed him again. "I want to stand in the same place where my old life ended and choose to start a new one. With you. On purpose." Lucian pulled her close, his face buried in her hair. "I don't deserve you." Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway." They held each other in the morning light flooding through the office windows. Two people who'd signed a contract as strangers and somehow found something far more valuable than money or protection or revenge. They'd found each other, and that was worth every risk, every scar, every terrifying choice that had led them here. Damn. 6 months later, Evelyn stood on the rooftop of the Apex Club in a dress that cost less than half of what the stylist had wanted to charge her. Simple. Elegant. Hers. The venue looked different at sunset. Warm light instead of harsh spotlights, string lights instead of chandeliers, 50 guests instead of 200 strangers. Jenna stood beside her as maid of honor, tears already streaming down her face. "I can't believe you're doing this." "Which part?" Evelyn asked. "Remarrying my husband or reclaiming the place where my ex publicly humiliated me?" "Both. It's very you." Evelyn laughed. Over the past months, she'd rebuilt her relationship with Jenna, had explained everything, the contract, the danger, the choice to stay. Jenna had threatened to kill Lucian, then met him, then grudgingly admitted he wasn't terrible. High praise from someone who'd wanted to murder Cameron with her bare hands. Her mother sat in this front row, still processing the fact that her daughter had been married for almost a year without telling anyone. That conversation had been brutal. Tears, recriminations, fear for Evelyn's safety. But she'd come to the wedding anyway, and that meant everything. Isabella stood on Lucian's side as best man, a choice that had raised eyebrows until people met her and realized she was the only person Lucian trusted absolutely. The officiant was an old friend of Evelyn's from architecture school, someone who understood that this wasn't a traditional ceremony and didn't try to make it one. Lucian waited at the end of the aisle in a suit that was somehow both formal and understated. His eyes never left Evelyn as she walked toward him. No processional music, no grand entrance, just a woman choosing to walk toward her future. When she reached him, he took her hands. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. "You clean up okay yourself." The officiant smiled. "We're gathered here today." "Wait," Evelyn interrupted. She turned to address the guests. "Before we do this, I need to say something." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Evelyn took a breath. "A year ago, I stood on this rooftop and watched my life fall apart. The man I thought I'd marry humiliated me in front of cameras and replaced me before I could process what was happening. I left here broken, convinced I'd never recover." She looked at Lucian. "And then I met someone who offered me a way to survive. A contract, a transaction, a marriage that wasn't supposed to mean anything. Lucian's grip on her hands tightened. But somewhere between surviving and thriving, between contracts and choices, I fell in love. Evelyn's voice was steady. Not with the man who saved me, but with the man who let me save myself, who stood beside me while I learned to be strong instead of protected, who loved me enough to let me be terrified and messy and still figuring it out. Tears streamed down her face now, but she didn't care. So this isn't a wedding. It's a recommitment. A choice I'm making with clear eyes and full knowledge of who we both are, broken in some places, strong in others, but trying anyway. She turned back to Lucian. I choose you, not because I need you, but because I want you, today and every day after. Lucian's voice was rough when he spoke. I choose you too, not as a contract or a convenience or a strategy, but as my partner, my equal, the woman who's braver than she knows and stronger than I deserve. The officiant cleared his throat, clearly moved. Well, that was... okay. Rings? Isabella handed them over. New rings, chosen together, without any connection to contracts or previous lives. They exchanged them slowly, deliberately. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant said. Again. For real this time. Lucian pulled Evelyn close and kissed her while their friends cheered and cameras flashed. But this time, the cameras were held by people who loved them, capturing a moment that was real and chosen and entirely theirs. When they broke apart, Evelyn whispered, No regrets? Not a single one, Lucian said. They turned to face their guests, this strange assembled group of people who'd witnessed their journey from contract to choice, from survival to something resembling happiness. Jenna was sobbing. Isabella was smiling. Evelyn's mother was clutching a tissue and looking between confusion and cautious acceptance. And somewhere below them, Manhattan pulsed with 1,000 stories of people falling apart and putting themselves back together. Evelyn and Lucian had been both. Now they were choosing to be something else. Two people building a future on the ruins of their past, brick by careful brick. The reception was small, intimate, nothing like the society galas Evelyn had attended as Mrs. Moretti, contract edition. They ate food that actually tasted good instead of looking impressive. They danced to music they'd chosen instead of what was expected. They laughed with friends instead of networking with strangers. Halfway through the night, Evelyn found herself standing at the rooftop edge, looking out at the city that had chewed her up and spit her out and somehow given her everything she'd never known she needed. Lucian appeared beside her, 2 champagne flutes in hand. He offered her one. What are you thinking? He asked. That a year ago, I stood approximately here and wanted to disappear. And now? Now I want to stay. Evelyn turned to him. I want to keep building my firm, keep working with you when our projects align, keep fighting with Isabella about whether I need security detail for grocery shopping. She means well. She means overprotective. Evelyn smiled. But I love her anyway. She loves you too. She'd never admit it, but she does. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights. There's something I need to tell you, Lucian said. Evelyn's pulse spiked. That sounds ominous. It's not. At least I hope it's not. He set down his champagne glass. I've been approached about expanding the company into international markets, real estate development in Europe. It's legitimate, profitable, and would require significant travel. Okay, Evelyn said slowly. I turned it down. Why? Because I don't want to spend the next 5 years building an empire if it means barely seeing you. I did that before. Prioritized business over everything else. It didn't end well. Lucian's voice was quiet. I'd rather build something smaller with you than something massive without you. Evelyn stared at him. Lucian, you can't just turn down opportunities because of me. I'm not turning them down because of you. I'm turning them down for us. There's a difference. He took her hand. I've spent 20 years building businesses. I want to spend the next 20 building a life. If that means smaller projects and less expansion, I'm okay with that. And if I'm not, what if I want you to take those opportunities? Then we figure out how to make it work. We travel together when possible. We build our schedules around each other. We compromise. Lucian's grip tightened. But I need you to know that you're not an obligation or a constraint. You're a choice I'm making every day. And that includes choosing what kind of life we build together." Evelyn's throat tightened. "I don't know what I did to deserve you. You survived. That's more than enough." She kissed him, tasting champagne and possibility and the strange, terrifying beauty of choosing someone without a safety net. When they broke apart, Isabella was watching from across the rooftop, her expression knowing. She raised her glass in a silent toast. Evelyn raised hers back. Two women who'd started as enemies and ended up as something close to family, bonded by the man they both loved and the understanding that survival required more than strength. It required trust. And trust, Evelyn was learning, was the hardest thing to build and the most valuable thing to keep. 3 years later, Evelyn stood in the office of Shaw and Associates Architecture, staring at blueprints for a community center in the Bronx. Her firm had grown from her alone to a team of 6, young architects hungry to build things that mattered instead of vanity projects for the ultra-wealthy. They took on projects nobody else wanted: affordable housing, public spaces, renovations of historic buildings in neglected neighborhoods. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't make headlines. But it mattered, and that was enough. Her phone buzzed. Text from Lucian. "Dinner tonight? I'm cooking." Evelyn smiled. Lucian had discovered cooking 6 months ago and treated it with the same intensity he brought to everything else: obsessive research, precision execution, occasional spectacular failures. "What are you making?" "It's a surprise. Last surprise gave me food poisoning. That was once. And I've improved. Debatable. But yes, 7 p.m.? Perfect. Love you." "Love you too." Evelyn set down her phone, still smiling. 3 years since the contract expired. 3 years since she'd chosen to stay. 3 years of building a life that was messy and complicated and sometimes terrifying, but real in ways she'd never experienced before Cameron destroyed her. She didn't think about Cameron often anymore. He'd testified against Varelli's organization, received a reduced sentence, and disappeared into obscurity somewhere in the Midwest. Sloan had cut ties immediately, married someone more politically viable, and never looked back. The story of Evelyn's public humiliation had been buried under 1,000 newer scandals. Nobody remembered the architect who'd been replaced at the Apex Club, but they knew Evelyn Shaw Moretti, architect, business owner, woman who'd survived organized crime and federal investigations and come out the other side stronger. That story was hers, and she'd earned every word of it. Isabella appeared in the doorway of Evelyn's office, holding coffee and looking annoyed. "Your husband is micromanaging my security protocols again. He's protective. He's obnoxious." "Also true." Evelyn accepted the coffee. "What did he do this time?" "Suggested I upgrade the penthouse system to include facial recognition on every entrance." "That seems reasonable." "It's our home, not a military installation." "You say that like there's a difference." Isabella glared. Then she smiled. "I hate that you're right. You love that I'm right. Don't push it." Isabella sat down. "I'm here about something else. Lucian's birthday is next month. I'm planning something. I need your help." Evelyn's eyebrows rose. "What kind of something?" "The kind that requires his wife to distract him for 48 hours while I coordinate with his entire security team and half of Manhattan's event planning industry." "You're throwing him a party." "I'm throwing him a party," Isabella confirmed. "And before you ask, yes, he'll hate it, but he deserves it anyway." Evelyn laughed. "Okay, I'm in. What do you need?" They spent the next hour planning, not a corporate gala or political fundraiser, but an actual party with people Lucian cared about. His security team, a few business partners who'd become friends, Evelyn's architecture colleagues, Isabella's girlfriend, a prosecutor who'd somehow fallen for the most terrifying woman Evelyn had ever met. Small, personal, real. The kind of event that would have been impossible 3 years ago, when Lucian's entire life was compartmentalized into business and strategy and controlled violence. But things had changed. He'd changed. They'd both changed. And somewhere in that transformation, they'd built something worth celebrating. Tikik. The night of Lucian's birthday, Evelyn convinced him to leave the city for a weekend upstate. A bed and breakfast in the Hudson Valley, supposedly just the two of them. No work, no obligations. Lucian had been suspicious, but agreed. They drove north through autumn foliage, talking about nothing important. Evelyn's latest project, Lucian's frustration with a delayed permit, whether they should adopt a dog. Normal couple things. Strange how normal had become the most extraordinary achievement. When they pulled up to the bed and breakfast, Lucian immediately knew something was wrong. "There are too many cars here," he said. "Maybe other guests?" Evelyn? "Fine, it's an ambush," she grinned. "Isabella planned it, blame her." Lucian stared at the building, then at Evelyn, then back at the building. "A surprise party." "Yep. I hate surprise parties." "I know. Isabella said you deserve it anyway." "I'm going to kill her." "You love her." "That's irrelevant." Evelyn leaned over and kissed him. "Come on, pretend to be surprised. It'll make her happy." "I'm not good at pretending." "You pretended I was your real wife for 6 months. You're better at it than you think." Lucian's expression softened. That stopped being pretend pretty quickly. "I know." Evelyn took his hand. "Now let's go inside before your sister comes out here and drags us in physically." They entered the building together. The main room erupted in shouts of "Surprise!" and Lucian managed to look genuinely shocked, which made Evelyn love him even more. Isabella appeared with a drink in each hand. "Happy birthday, you emotionally constipated disaster." "Touching," Lucian said dryly. "Really captures the sentiment." "I know." Isabella handed him a drink. "Now circulate. People came a long way to celebrate your continued existence." Lucian glanced at Evelyn. She squeezed his hand. "Go," she said. "I'll save you if it gets unbearable." "Promise?" "Promise." He kissed her forehead and moved into the crowd. Evelyn watched him navigate the room, shaking hands, accepting well wishes, even laughing at something one of his security team said. He looked lighter than she'd ever seen him. Younger, somehow. Happy. "You did that," Isabella said, appearing beside her. "Did what?" "Made him human again. He was turning into a machine before you showed up. All strategy, no life. You changed that." Evelyn's throat tightened. "He saved me first." "You saved each other. That's how it works when it's real." They stood together, watching Lucian interact with people who'd become more than employees or assets, people who'd become something close to family. "Thank you," Evelyn said quietly. "For what?" "For trusting me, for training me, for not shooting me when we first met." Isabella smiled. "That last one was close." "I know. But I'm glad I didn't." Isabella's voice softened. "You're good for him. And you're good at this. Running your firm, handling his world, building something that matters. I respect that." Coming from Isabella, it was the highest compliment imaginable. "I learned from the best," Evelyn said. "Damn right you did." They clinked glasses. Later that night, after the party wound down and guests filtered out, Evelyn and Lucian stood on the building's back porch, looking out at the dark woods surrounding them. "Thank you," Lucian said. "For what?" "I didn't plan this." "For staying. For choosing this." He gestured vaguely at the building behind them. "For making it possible for me to have a life that includes surprise parties and friends and reasons to celebrate." "You did that yourself." "We did it together." Evelyn leaned against him. "Yeah, we did." They stood in the quiet, wrapped in each other, and the sounds of the woods, and the knowledge that they'd survived everything that had tried to destroy them. "I have something for you," Lucian said. "It's your birthday. I'm supposed to give you gifts. This one's mutual." He pulled a folder from inside his jacket. "I've been working on something, a foundation, nonprofit, focused on supporting women who've experienced intimate partner violence, housing assistance, legal support, job training, protection from stalking or harassment." Evelyn's breath caught. "Lucian, I want to fund it, but I want you to run it." He handed her the folder. "Or at least sit on the board. Use your architecture background to design safe housing, your connections to build partnerships, your experience to make sure we're actually helping instead of just throwing money at the problem." Evelyn opened the folder. Inside were preliminary organizational documents, mission statements, budget projections, and a proposed name, the Evelyn Shaw Foundation. Her vision blurred. "You can't name it after me." "Why not? You're the reason it exists." Lucian's voice was quiet. Cameron tried to destroy you. I offered you a way to survive. But you did the actual work of rebuilding. I want to help other women do the same thing. And I want you to lead it." Evelyn couldn't speak, could only stare at the documents through tears, at this man who'd started as a stranger offering a contract and ended up offering her the chance to turn her pain into purpose. "Is that a yes?" Lucien asked. "It's a yes." She threw her arms around him. "It's absolutely a yes." They held each other under the stars, two people who'd signed a contract as a survival strategy and ended up building something far more valuable. Not just love, but legacy. A way to take the worst moments of their lives and transform them into something that helped others survive their own worst moments. And that, Evelyn realized, was the real ending. Not revenge on Cameron, not victory over Varelli, but the choice to take everything that had tried to break her and use it to build something stronger. 5 years after the contract expired, Evelyn stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Foundation's first housing facility. A converted brownstone in Brooklyn, renovated by her firm, designed specifically for women escaping dangerous situations. 20 units, private, secure, beautiful in a way that said you matter, you're worth protecting, you deserve more than survival. Lucien stood beside her, his hand warm in hers. Isabella was there with her partner, both of them looking simultaneously proud and uncomfortable with the publicity. Jenna had flown in from Chicago, where she'd moved for a job opportunity and immediately started organizing local chapters of the foundation. Even Evelyn's mother was there, still not entirely comfortable with Lucien's history, but unable to deny the good they were doing together. The press asked questions. Evelyn answered them with the same honesty she'd learned to apply to everything. "Yes, I experienced intimate partner violence in the form of public humiliation and manipulation. No, it wasn't physical abuse, but it was devastating. And yes, I survived because I found people who supported me instead of exploiting me. That's what this foundation does. Provide support without strings, safety without judgment, and resources without requirements that re-traumatize people who've already been through hell." The cameras flashed. The journalists scribbled notes. And somewhere, someone watching would see this and realize they didn't have to stay broken. That was the point. After the ceremony, Lucien pulled Evelyn aside. "I have something else for you," he said. "More foundations? Because I'm running out of hours in the day." "Not a foundation, a choice." He handed her a small box. "Open it." Evelyn did. Inside was a key. "To what?" she asked. "A building in Queens, former warehouse, needs complete renovation." Lucien's eyes were bright. "I bought it 6 months ago. I want to give it to you. Turn it into whatever you want. More foundation housing, your firm's headquarters, a combination of both. It's yours. No contracts. No conditions. Just a building waiting for you to decide its future." Evelyn stared at the key, then at Lucien, then back at the key. "You bought me a warehouse." "I bought you possibility." "That's the most romantic thing you've ever said." "I'm working on it." Evelyn kissed him, not caring that cameras were still rolling, that people were watching, that this moment would probably end up in Foundation promotional materials. Let them watch. Let them see two people who'd started as a transaction and ended up as partners. Let them see that survival was just the beginning, and thriving was the real victory. When they broke apart, Lucien whispered, "No regrets?" "Not a single one," Evelyn said. And she meant it, because standing there in Brooklyn, holding a key to a building she'd fill with purpose, surrounded by people who'd become her chosen family, Evelyn Shaw Moretti had finally, completely, rebuilt herself. Not into who she'd been before Cameron, but into someone stronger. Someone who'd walked through fire and come out tempered instead of destroyed. Someone who'd signed a contract with a stranger and ended up finding herself. The old Evelyn would never have survived this world. But the new one? She didn't just survive, she thrived. And that made every scar, every risk, every terrifying choice worth it. Manhattan glittered in the distance, full of stories of people falling and rising and falling again. Evelyn's story was just one among millions. But it was hers. And for the first time since Cameron had removed her engagement ring in front of cameras, Evelyn knew exactly who she was. Not a victim, not a survivor, but a woman who'd chosen herself, and then chosen to share that self with someone who'd earned it. That was the real ending. Not revenge, not rescue, but choice. Deliberate, terrifying, beautiful choice. And everything that came after was just two people building a life on that foundation, brick by careful brick, choosing each other every single day. No contracts required, just love. Real, messy, hard-earned love. And that, Evelyn thought as Lucian's hand found hers again, was worth more than any amount of money or safety or revenge. It was worth everything.